for tonight. Ready to go with the camera? All right. I'll do roll call here. Councilor Bickford is here. Okay. Councilor Bowie is here. Councilor Cody is here. Councilor LaRochelle is here. Councilor Lunt is me. And Councilor Mason is here. And Councilor Pomelo is here.
Good full house.
Yeah. All right. Now, I would like to move the first item, the budget item, to the first item ahead of council working rules. That's okay with council. We don't have any objections on the first on that item. I just think we need to do the financial stuff first, and then we can have time to argue about the rules afterwards.
We're discussing the rules.
Oh, well.
We can argue about the budget.
Right, well, we can argue. Okay.
How's that?
I hope we discuss both of them. Okay, now I know, Mike, you had had some concerns about the budget as presented. You want to tell us what those?
Yes, we just asked to move that first.
Yes, I have to move that first and without objection.
So we have time afterwards to discuss.
Discuss the rest of the rules.
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Joe. You got some concerns, Mike, I don't know.
Well, I think council
I know.
got my email.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I just have general concerns on some of the things that are taking place in the budget this year, that we haven't appropriately planned for them, and we're not a full understanding of how it's all going to work. Right? My main areas of concern are in the reorganization, consolidation efforts, the reduction in payroll errors, and of course the issue with the raises, which we've heard at all of the public hearings. So, I mean, I just feel personally that items of this nature, that we need to make these types of decisions during the fiscal process, we should have held workshops on these items so that we could have better understood the goings-on during the, and understood all of that, so that we all would have been on the same page going into the budget process, right? I don't think we have good solid plans on how everything's going to work. I haven't heard those good solid plans anyway. And I really think that we're trying to, right, the last thing this council needs, and it's another black eye in how things are happening, how this managed. And I would rather take baby steps, kind of crawl before you walk, walk before you run. So while I think some of these ideas are good, right, I'm not against the ideas in total, but I think the way we implement them needs to be more timely and maybe in a slower fashion that will allow us to be extremely successful in them. And so I think we should relook at those things and really determine whether or not we should take the full fight at this point in time.
I certainly share a lot of your same concerns on that issue.
So, you know, I mean, the first one I'll bring up is in the payroll department, right? You're talking about going to bi-weekly pay, talking about reducing hours. So you're messing with employees' paychecks, you're messing with their benefits, right? And what I would suggest is that, while I think it's a great thing, and there's a lot of savings, I don't disagree with that, and we're going to bi-weekly, but I think we've got to graduate into that. I don't think you need to get rid of the position to start with, right, or to reduce that. I don't think we understand fully what's going to happen with the culture change and all the other things that potentially can take place. I've talked to a few other people who run and manage payroll areas, and when they've made those types of changes, they ran into a lot of obstacles, issues they had to deal with. And I think that doing that in a part-time process is would be very disruptive to the town employees. And I think if we graduate into that and we see how that goes the first year and we work through that in the first year, then we position ourselves to be able to make further adjustments and further cuts after that. So, I mean, and I don't see a plan on the operations side for the consolidation, putting, in new public works, solid waste, sewer director, and then having the operations managers, and then, you know, putting people back into different positions. I mean, we heard in the public hearings that there was concern about the pay wages and that they weren't going down, although we were adding different additional people. What I'm concerned about is, you know, you're talking about taking a position that is currently now non-union, moving that position or that person, and I want to talk about people, back into the union.
That's not true.
There's going to have to be a need to adjust pays there to do that. So, you know, I just think there's a potential for us opening up some potential liability for ourselves with opening up larger pay scales and things like that within union agreements. So I would personally rather have gone through a workshop, understood exactly how this is going to work, what the roles and responsibilities are in detail, and all that stuff, and make sure council fully understands it and agrees with it before it gets thrown to us into a budget that we then have to go and accept. Right? And I had a number of other questions, but I don't know how you want to go through these or whatever and address that. So, I mean, I could sit here and talk all night, but that's not what we're really here for, right? I mean, we're here to understand and make decisions and make changes. I'm just telling you, because I haven't been able to attend meetings, and I apologize for that. But due to my workload and things that were going on, I was not able to. But I felt it important that I raise these concerns and issues back to council so that we make sure we've addressed all of the potential issues, answered all the questions, and that we as council, we need to feel comfortable when we vote on this budget, that we think it's going to be a successful budget, everything's going to work, and that we can stand up to the public and say, we're all behind this. And right now, today, I can't do it.
Roger?
Just to follow up a little bit also, we was thrown a survey that we took other municipalities and what they're paying and what they're there. It really doesn't matter what these other municipalities are paying. If we can't afford it, we can't afford it. We got to look at what our municipality can afford to pay and what our municipality is willing to do. And I really don't care what the other municipalities are doing. And if we can't afford it and the employees are that unhappy, they can go work for the other municipalities. Because we cannot put this town in a situation that it was in last year. It's not going to be something that I think is going to fare very well with it.
Yeah, I know, for myself, I'm very concerned about the idea of putting, like, laying off frontline workers in public works and then turning around using that money to give raises to management staff. I think the public really doesn't like the look of that.
Well, and I think, I mean, from the survey perspective, and again, this is my opinion, I mean, surveys are good. I mean, you have to kind of balance and base yourself and price yourself within the industry. But as a counselor, I want to understand, you know, that's a survey that comes from MMA. I don't know what all the job descriptions and the responsibilities were for those employees as they relate to ours, right? So we didn't have the ability and the time to sit down and understand all of that, to say, are we really comparing apples and apples, right? So from my perspective, I'm hesitant on that survey because the other thing is it's an MMA survey and it's only who elects to put into the survey. It's not a requirement of every municipality to put into that. In fact, I don't even know if Lisbon's data is in there. If Lisbon's data was in there, that may affect the value of the raises or you know, salary averages that are in there, right? So you've got to understand what we're looking at, right? And I think that me as a counselor, I need to understand that before I'm willing to make a value judgment decision on where I'm going to take that. And I honestly feel that I haven't been given the opportunity and the understanding of that information in order to do that. Which always brings me back to, we should have had workshops in January or February or whatever to understand all this stuff and to be brought through all this stuff. So come the budget process, we're all on board. We all understand, right? So we all know, and then it becomes, what do we think the community can afford?
Yeah,
Sorry.
a few things too. I mean, I've talked to Mike along the way of the budget just to try to get feedback through. I mean, a couple points I just want to make. Number one, I think that going back to looking at every item is difficult because there's a lot there. I mean, every year it's just amazing how much there is in the budget. As simple as it should be, it's not. It's pretty complex. Two things I know we've been asking you, Steve, is number one, this year we wanted to come in with something that had a zero effect on the taxpayers and actually a flat budget, if you want to call it that. And secondly, since we've been here, the biggest thing that we've been asking for is consolidation on all avenues, whether it's school or within departments or other departments of town. And so, I mean, just to hit on a couple of the items, and Mike, you know where I stand on this. I mean, I like to see things before the budget because I don't think the budget is a time to restructure the town. But on the other hand, if we're in an opportunity right now where we do have retirements and we are able to move people around and so to speak, not from day one maybe to change their job descriptions, but at least lay it out to the point where, you know what I mean, it would be effective and throughout the year that could transition or look at. I mean, I like the idea of transitioning in something, but the idea is you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think it's important if we have an opportunity where we have people that are retiring and instead of actually just putting money in the budget to actually replace that person, I think the idea of if we can save money by, you know, taking people and making them, you know, working type foremen that actually still control their staff and just have someone over. The overall view of it, I think I like. Would have been nice to see more details. I definitely earlier would have been better, but yeah, I think what we have right now is even when it comes to payroll and other items that we talked about. I mean, I would have been all on board if early in the year we were able to merge with school, because I think with the school and the town, there's a lot of opportunities to merge a lot of our functions that we do half a mile apart. You mean we pay, yeah,
The backroom functions.
you know, just things that can happen. So, I mean, I don't really want to bang. It kind of goes back to, you know, one of the things that I thought was a high point of Steve when we actually were looking at his interviews was the idea of the functions he looked at in Lost and Audubon, with the idea of, oh my God, there's so much possibility of consolidations, but at the end of the day, no one really wants to consolidate because it changes so much. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to see over a period of time. So I think it is something we need to look at and not really, you know, take baby steps, if you will, but some ways you're going to start at some process.
And I don't disagree with any of that, right? I mean, and I'm okay with, again, walking before you run.
Yeah.
But again, yes, we've expressed consolidation and trying to merge things and reduce stuff, right? But again, to me, I don't think that should be thrown to us in a budget, right? That should be stuff that's worked with council, right? To understand, or work with council in the school department, right? That's where I fall off the wagon here, right? As far as this not being the appropriate time to do it in the budget process, right? Is that, right, where we haven't been brought along in a timely fashion to understand, so that, at least for me, to feel comfortable that I can justify to my constituents, the citizens of Lisbon, that this is the right move, right? You're going to have the people saying it's another level of management. You're going to have them saying things like that, right? But we have to understand the plan and how it's going to work so that we can explain that to those people, right? And the way for us to learn that, in my mind, is to get that through workshops and a detailed understanding of why this is the right thing to go do it. And you talk about consolidation. From my understanding, there was a ton of things on the list with the school, right? One being janitorial services. Why didn't we consolidate janitorial services? They offered to do it for free.
They did not, Mike.
Well, that's not what the chairman.
Can I just
would
speak
tell
for a
us.
second?
So, I mean, I'm not picking necessarily on you, right?
No,
But it's
you have a
your
lot of
growth.
misinformation, Mike,
Well-
that is not correct. And Jessica can
I don't
account
think
for
I do,
that.
but that's okay.
Well, then you don't believe what I'm telling you. First of all, let me, the Buttons or the Public Works Director is not being putting down into a union position. That
I
is
didn't
not.
say he was.
Yes, you did.
I said that there are positions coming down out of that are going to be put back into the union. One of them is your current foreman position is being downgraded into the union. Are you bringing him back in at the current rate he's making? Are you going to make him
The
the
foreman is
same
already
rate?
a union person.
The foreman is not.
Yes, he is.
But you're going to put him back doing truck driving. Because
He
your
is.
operations manager is going to do the foreman, right?
Some of it. which I went
And
through.
there we go, see, the council doesn't understand the full picture, doesn't understand the plan.
You don't.
Because you didn't
But
sit
the
with us
rest
and
of
go
the
over it.
council, at our last workshop, we sat here and I went
listened
through
to
the job
tape,
description.
And there wasn't a person in this table here that asked a solid question about what that plan is. And we can go replay the tape right now if you want.
I don't care. People don't ask questions, how are we supposed to know that there's questions to be asked? Okay, the survey was done, okay, on communities of the same size, okay, who provided the same level of service. Did you read the survey?
I did look at the survey. You're comparing our fire chief, well, it's a little research I did, okay? You're comparing our fire chief, not that I don't like our fire chief, but if I could find his budget, you're comparing him to Brewer, right, who has about 22 full-time people, an assistant fire chief, a secretary, right? I mean, it's the scope and responsibilities of things that aren't being done in that survey that I feel council needs to understand and address, right? I mean, those are the types of things that we need to understand and work through, or at least I do as a councilman, right? To understand what's the integrity behind that survey and what it means to the town of Lisbon, right? And I don't care if it's the same population, I don't care if it's roughly the same dollar value, whatever, right? It's what's in that department, right? When I'm compared to Bath or Brewer or whatever, or Cape Elizabeth or whatever, that has a different profile of staffing, has full-time, with part-time, with full-time chiefs, right? I mean, all that stuff is not comparative to what Lisbon is. So how are the job responsibilities the same?
Regardless of whether employees are full-time, part-time, or volunteer, the same trainings and the same work has to be done in regards to the fire chief's position. The same oversight needs to be done because there's still an employee to that effect. You know, the status may be a little different, but whether they're volunteer, part-time, or full-time, you still need to have the same level of trainings. You still need to track all of that. You still need all of that. And I wrote up a little thing on it that I was trying to find. All of that still is the same. The chief still has to oversee all those people.
I don't dispute that, but there's different oversight and supervision to a full-time volunteer than there is when you've got 23 full-time and 12 part-time, when you've got a
You
chief
have a lot
and
more
assistant
support
chief.
staff to help you when you have all the full-time staff.
Right, and
versus
therefore
a
you should be
part-time.
paying that person more, because he's got more people to oversee and he's got more responsibility and has to do that, right? I mean,
I disagree.
it doesn't,
That's,
they're just not, in my mind, apples and apples when you get down into the details of this, right? And to me, that's the piece that, at least me, and I would say we as counselors, don't fully understand when it comes to that survey. To me, it's not as simple in the survey as saying we're compared to the same size municipalities and the same size as us. I've always disagreed with any type of approach like that. I want to know the facts, I want to understand the responsibilities, the job descriptions. I told you this a number of times in prior years when we were going through surveys. We need to make sure we understand that. That has never been supplied to me as a counselor, to understand that, for me to justify whether or not I give these people raises and approve raises.
And to follow up on exactly what Mike is saying, how many times we've had this discussion when dealing with the police budget, and you personally have said you can't compare the town to town to town just by population. There's a lot of other things that go on with it. Well, now we're in a different department, and it's a whole different opinion. I agree that what Mike is saying, that this town cannot be compared to these towns that we have been compared to. If we can't afford it as a municipality, we can't afford it.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we can't be compared. I'm saying we need to understand the details within that survey to make sure the comparisons are of equal character so that we're making the right value decision for our community. And to me, that's the piece I don't feel comfortable with. I don't understand.
So do you have any suggestions on how you would adjust the budget to get back to something you'd be more comfortable with? Regarding these,
I mean,
you brought up?
The things that I would do is, first of all, we heard from the public, I don't think I'd give out the raises. But if I was gonna give out the raises, I made examples of how to go about in a 2-year fashion to do that. But I would put back the payroll clerk for a year and understand that process and see how that works, and see the fact that we're gaining those benefits, and we think we will, and then make that next step, right? I would look at, and I don't know, maybe the public works thing is okay, I don't know, but I'd like to understand the plan behind that more. I don't know how you can kind of gradually transition into that one. That's a little more difficult to gradually transition into from a public works perspective, but I want to make sure that we've covered all of our bases from a union perspective, and that we're not opening our doors for anything, and that we're not driving any other issues potentially for us further on down the road. Right? I mean,
Are these all issues that you brought up, are they issues with everyone, every one of the councils?
I don't know. I can't speak for the rest of the
I'm
council.
just saying, there's only a finite amount of time to go back and address each of these individuals' items. It needs to be done right away if it needs to be addressed. If not, then
Yeah, how does the rest of the council feel about this? Anyone have any other opinions?
I
I'd like to say something on the merger of Public Works and transfer station. As far as I know, Buttons is, I'm sorry I said the name, but the director is, he's, likes what it's happened to him. Now, I don't know about the union. That's completely, but as far as he is, he's happy with it. And as far as the retiree, he seems to be very happy with it and is looking forward to helping transition. So if everybody wants this transition that works here, the higher up, then I think it might work, but I don't know about the union. That's probably the first thing we have to do is find out what's gonna happen with the union and go from there.
I agree as well, not having had experience in the past 2 or 3 years, that's been one of the questions that have been asked. Is there a wage restriction that's happening to the issue that Mike is making about union wages, setting a new precedent?
So basically what I can see, as far as the restructuring there, I can't see anything wrong with it, but we've got to just find out what, about the union and then go from there.
There are no union issues with this reorganization, none.
None?
None.
But the question was asked, is the pay being adjusted back to
Union
comparative
scales?
to-
No, not on union scales.
Is it a union position?
No,
Going
it's not
back
a
to-
union position.
So going back to the working foreman, is not a union position?
The foreman is a union position.
Okay, I guess I'm confused.
The operations manager is not a union position.
Right, so right now the Public Works Director, it's gonna have a new title. So the Public Works Director currently is gonna go back to being a working foreman.
Operational manager.
Operations manager.
So he's gonna have a new
He
title.
has a new title and new responsibilities on top of what,
And that is not a union position.
that's correct,
So the foreman is in the union today?
yes.
Because at one time, you told me that the foreman was going back to be a truck driver, going to be a laborer.
Well,
'Cause
he
we were
already
mo-
does
'cause
drive
we were
truck.
moving that, and then you weren't going to have a foreman's position, right? And you were going to have the operations manager. So now, when you say this to me, now I think we've added a layer of management.
That's
Because I'm keeping a foreman outside of the union. I've got a public works director that's now going to be titled as the ops manager, who got a raise. And I've added somebody on top of that.
The only thing that I can see on this, the way he's done it, is
Again,
when
we all don't understand the plan, right? It's
When-
never been laid out to us in detail.
when the Public Works Director, before he was a director, unless there was an emergency, he didn't go out. During, the crew was well. Now, in his new position, he will plow snow, he will he will be there to supervise the crew, make sure things that the foreman can't do, or is tied up with other things, because the foreman does plow. So it's it's a little bit, you have to know how the thing runs to start with, which I do. I work there. You know, it was a while ago, but I know how it works, and I don't have a problem with seeing how it's working. And I've talked to the, it is, I just don't have a, you know,
Guess I don't understand the difference between a foreman and an operations manager
yeah.
in job
The
responsibility.
okay.
Right,
Yeah.
again, it
Yeah.
gets down to understanding the plan, responsibilities of everyone, how it's gonna work, right? I don't know that that's ever been laid out to any of us in a sheet of paper as to how that's all gonna work.
And the operations manager has less administrative responsibility, is that right?
Right.
Budgeting.
We
He's
now have
he's not gonna be developing the budget, he's gonna be help manage the budget. He's also gonna be picking up responsibilities for building maintenance, which he doesn't currently have. He also is gonna be able to put a plow on the front of his pickup truck and do minor plowing without any conflict from the union, things like that.
Yeah, I'm just still. And I think the thing I hear is that even in public works, a lot of the people there are having some heartache over this. They're not really sure that they're comfortable with this. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, that's not their job.
I know.
Our job is to make recommendations, to find efficiencies, and to bring the budget in flat. That's what we have done.
Right. And the only thing I would say is that I understand this approach of bringing, if you're going to let the operations manager plow, it sounds good to say there's no union complications now, but I've been through a lot of union items before, and if every piece of plowing before has been done by a union person, you're going to run into issues when a non-union person starts plowing, unless you contract the services out, which we've done in the past. Right? So I'm leery that, again, that's an opportunity for an issue within the union, because there's going to be some job responsibilities that we're trying to give this operations manager that we're not sure 100% how the union's going to take it, and they'll never tell you they got a problem with it until it's put in place and they start to grieve it.
We have sat with the union representative and gone through it.
And I mean,
Yeah, come
My comment is that, yes, I have been to Public Works Department several times, and I've talked with some of the people there, and I disagree that morale is not an issue. Morale within a department is important. It's important that within a department that there is good morale, that the people work together. They work really good together there now. And no, people are afraid to speak out because they're afraid if I say something, I may lose my job. That's not good morale. It almost sounds to me
That's not-
like,
You know, Dot, we have talked with them, and you know what? These are personnel issues, these are not budget issues.
I realize.
And to getting into personnel issues is not appropriate in this forum.
I'm not getting into personnel.
Well, she
But-
is.
Personnel,
Don't get into
it's all in
personnel,
part, it's all part of a budget and a working relationship.
Yes, go ahead.
It still appears to me to be another level of management. And I don't see how we can save by adding a level.
And one of the things that I would like to bring, just for, not reasoning the time, but the reasoning the idea of discussion that we've had in the past, and all the items are pretty, without doubt, have concerns, okay? 3 or 4 years ago, you know, again, every year we go about the budget a little bit different way, and one of the things I mentioned, and Mike even taught us a few years back, is look, town manager part of budget. You know, town manager is the manager, you know, we're looking at the dollars and cents to see how it works, and either we kind of agree or we don't. I mean, when it comes to public works and the other ones, if Steve, to me, has brought in a budget for the public works that is actually not adding dollar values to it by getting less, but actually somehow trying to actually make that department be as serviceable with, you know, less money. I mean, actually, big cutbacks, but actually the idea of, I don't think, as a budget standpoint, that, you know, I mean, I need to know exactly today if this will work or if it don't. It's more the idea of, you know, we're not changing it drastically enough that midway through the year it couldn't actually just be managed by the same people. You know what I mean? I'm just wondering at this point in time, are we actually talking about how we're gonna, you know, define the management, or are we actually defining the budget of the, and I do agree the concerns, but I mean, as far as on a budget budget standpoint, I mean, for the solid waste.
Well, you're giving raises increases
But I mean,
for
that,
certain things, for certain positions, right? You're increasing an individual's position, multiple position salary by 8 to almost 10%, right? Because of the job responsibilities that you're now assigning.
But I would take that more underneath the job raise description, because maybe the person would do.
Right, but if it doesn't
Yeah.
work out, you gotta go back, you're gonna take the money away?
But-
Absolutely not.
But would this, if there wasn't a raise, okay, going back to the individual raises, if there wasn't a raise, would this still take place? I mean,
I would still have my same concerns, but I would feel it would be less of an impact to the citizens because there's less money involved from a budgetary perspective.
less money as in.
Less cost going into the budget because you're not giving out the raise.
But this budget actually is a less dollar factor for Public Works than what it was last year though, right? I mean, it's a deduction in the Public Works budget.
There is
So-
some deduction, yeah, there's a deduction at all. I mean, I'm still waiting to see how much of it is really 100% based on salary and benefits and how that plays out and where we're seeing those savings, right, on a line item level, right? I've been told, we were told at the public hearing, we're gonna save $200,000, almost $300,000. But, I mean, I don't know how that all
I think
breaks
it was
out.
90, I mean, one of the meetings we had, it was right around 90,000 as far as for,
Right.
Okay,
for the
90,000.
public. And again, that's just going back from public hearing to before, and that was split amongst all the departments, right? That wasn't just Public Works, right? And Public Works
It
wasn't
was
it?
the whole consolidation effort.
Yeah.
With this consolidation, we've heard that there's going to be a savings of $93,000. I'd like to hear where the savings are broken down. Talking dollars, I'd like to hear dollars.
Looking at the new position, I'm just gonna go through how this all came about, and I can make a copy, I guess, of this. The Public Works Solid Waste Treatment Plant Director with his current salary, offset by what we're projecting with this increase, and the increases with Social Security, and retirement costs, would be an increase of $3,179.20. Within Public Works personnel, we would have the loss of 2 staff positions, which would be $32,000. The corresponding Social Security, retirement, workers' comp, and unemployment, and health insurance costs. With the salary and those benefit savings, you're looking at a savings of $50,504.
Total, or
With the
plus
Public
the
Works.
32?
No, total.
What was that figure again, 50?
$50,504. At the, at solid waste, with the personnel, the loss or the retirement of a full-time staff position and the corresponding Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment, and health insurance, you're saving another $67,790. Adding to that, the increase for the remaining staff that is picking up additional duties and the increase to Social Security and retirement, you're adding back $2,899. And adding in a part-time staff to that, you're adding another $20,000. Put that all together, you come to $92,000 in savings.
What, the responsibilities for the director, overall director, namely the engineer, have increased. We haven't done anything there salary-wise, right?
We
For
made
the
an adjustment, 8%.
8%, so that's.
Over 2 years.
Is that figured in here too?
Over 2 years.
Yes.
Did you just say that was $3,179
Yes.
a year?
That was initially with, I don't have the calculation of it to show, but I believe that was the initial calculation with it all being up front.
Go ahead.
So it's probably only showing the 4% because the salary is split between the sewer budget and the public works.
It was the 8% on each side, right?
No, it'd actually be 4% on each
No,
side.
It's
is what
4%
she's
for a
describing.
total of 8, because half of the salary goes to sewer.
Right, but you
Half
still have to
is-
increase each half by 8%.
No, that would be
Right, but it's, it would only
So
be
it's
half.
4% to solid waste, public works, and 4% to sewer? Did I get that right?
Yes.
That would still add up to a total of 4% increase because you're not additive across them.
When we're talking budget too, we have to keep in mind possible loss of tax revenue. The former Knight Celotex property, the buildings may be torn down at a significant loss of real estate taxes. The gas station, the Getty downtown has closed, moved everything out of there, so we're still getting real estate taxes, but we'll be losing personal property taxes. I understand there are 2 or 3 more businesses downtown that will be closing. The buildings will still be generating real estate taxes, but at a loss of personal property tax. We need to consider that. We need to look to the future.
They said the state also is coming in a lot lower than what they anticipated. What are we gonna lose there?
We've been told by the legislative body that all the changes that may take place in Augusta will not impact the municipalities. We got that from the Legislative Policy Committee and people from MMA who were up there every day.
How can it not?
The budget's already considered on the worst case of what?
And our budget has, for revenue sharing, has been considered the lowest part of what it would be. If Governor LePage's budget, as he has proposed it, passes, it will go up by another 400,000. And the schools will go down, I think, what did Rick say, 100 and some odd thousand. So we're still kind of ahead of the curve.
So to go through this, to try to understand it a little bit better, the original figures that were given on the wage adjustment spread over the 2 years for this particular position was about $5,500 for the 2 years. So this number doesn't match. We're trying to understand where did the $3,179 come from when the other amount that we had was $2,772 a year, or a total of $5,500 for 2 years.
I can run back to my desk really quickly. This is something I created like a month ago, and to be honest, I haven't spent every waking minute on the budget to know up to date. I know when I did this, I have his current salary and the projected salary, and that may have only included the 4% at that time, so it's half. I would have to go and confirm with the formula, because all I'm looking at is a hard number right now. And like I said, it was a month ago that I created this.
I think it's about $2,400 for one position, so if we're talking, several positions, that could be a significant amount of money, so the numbers are more concrete.
One way to do this as a phased in, as you were talking about, is to do it. If we had Ryan take over at the transfer station, but not do the public works, and keep public works the way it is right now for the year, and see how it works out with Ryan taking over at the, what?
It's not top position. I mean,
Okay.
Phase in gradually.
It's hard
Phase
to
in
do
gradually,
that.
and see how it works out, and give it a chance to see if it works out or not, rather than try to do such a huge change in 1 year without really having briefed it in the whole council in a good way that we're comfortable with yet.
But I guess at the end of the day, that I get to is budgetary wise for us, is it gonna make a dollar for us putting a dollar value on these departments? Is it gonna make a difference how we do that? I mean, we have a manager, to me, actually, that actually does that type of stuff. To me, we're actually a council looking at a budget, so is the budget that we're looking at for these going to change that much drastically if we approve the budget that's put for us for that department? I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it, whether or not, how you look at it, and I realize there's a lot more to it than that, but just dollar-wise, if you were to actually say, well, we'll have them do part of the transition, not the other part of the transition, dollar-wise, does that really make a big difference for us when we look at the dollar?
Question is though,
Yeah.
this budget was put out here because, I mean, all this cutback and consolidation was all done because of the budget process. If it hadn't been for the budget process, which started in January, none of this would have happened. It would have been fat, dumb, and happy, leave it alone. So you can't really expect him, I don't think, to attack at any other time of year because it wasn't even a concern for anybody. So now it is a concern, and largely because of budget, something.
No, I don't agree with that, Dawn, only from the fact that council has been promoting the town manager to look into these things, do these things, right? What I'm disappointed in is that it wasn't done through workshops, so the council was made aware of it, right? That's my biggest beef about all of this, right? Is that I don't feel comfortable and know that it can work 100% because I haven't been brought up to speed through the process of how all this stuff came together, and what's the right thing. I mean, when I look at the pay scale stuff, I mean, you know how I feel about the study, but where's everybody else? How come we're only picking these positions? How did everybody else match up in the pay scale study? Are we gonna get hit with another batch next year?
And I asked that
Right.
in the last workshop.
I mean, does everybody, so why don't we see the full picture of where everybody stands? To do that, why do we pick?
It's in the
just
survey.
these? Huh?
There's a whole spreadsheet in the survey. It shows the differences and discrepancies.
Because what ended up
All
happening, like in the
positions.
last workshop,
That survey,
is
I
we
have
only
no
had
faith
like 3
in at all.
I don't
positions
either.
pulled out for the wage adjustments.
Surveys
And
are
I said
worthless.
that if we were gonna do it, I wanted to make sure that we were looking at all of the positions
Mhm.
that had the greatest disparity. And so maybe to phase it in over 2 years in order to get the adjustments, and that's how the greater list came. But I don't know that that's sort of, maybe we're still looking at the What was the
Right.
total amount, again, of the wage adjustments that were being done? Remember we had talked about the whole amount? That's what I
The
recall,
1.75, yes.
The 1.75%, not the wage adjustment last year.
If you were to do it over a 2-year period that we had proposed, the first year would be 26,893. The second year would be 19,526.
26,000 what?
893,
And 19,000?
526.
So in addition to the 46,000? The 1.75% is 46,000, and then you have so the two figures you just gave me, the 26,000 and the 19,000, is your 46,000?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the 1.75%?
No, that's
or
just the wage adjustments for the positions that we.
So you're really talking 92,000 total for the 1.75%
we have a
increase
number
and
of-
I
then.
was-
1.75, I don't think was quite the $40,000 range. I thought it was in
No,
there.
right.
Yeah.
I don't think I printed that
Which isn't very transparent, is it?
No, it isn't at all. Looks like
It
cronyism.
was up to me, I'd put that money back in there,
But-
avoid the public works consolidation and not give the raises out. I mean, I think people deserve the money, but I can't see taking such a risk with public works without really understanding it all the way first.
I think part of the difficulty with all this is it is a personnel problem. They can be very particular, and it's difficult to mention names and who's gonna lose what, and who's gonna gain what, and I think that makes it very difficult. And what type of forum are we able to discuss that in? Not this one, certainly. I mean, we can't name names, we can't name responsibilities, really, because we don't know who's gonna lose what.
But is it
So-
really up to
We
the
are very
council?
confident that we are going to see efficiencies and better planning and better, better use of manpower.
Mark,
Yes, right.
you know, this is the same
All these
speech.
changes.
This is the same exact thing we were told, Steve, when we talked about messing around with the assessing department. And look at the mess that we got into with that.
Roger.
And this is the kind of thing, Steve, you sit there and you tell us this crap, and I don't believe any of it.
But this
I don't,
pretty
for one
obvious.
thing, most of the public doesn't believe it either.
But the assessing is not even a compatible.
Yes, it is a compatible thing.
Yes, it is.
It was exactly the same thing. We were told that these people were gonna come in here and they were gonna set the world afire, and the only thing they set afire
They found
was the
our problems.
people out
They found
there.
our problems is the only thing they did, unfortunately. I mean, it isn't, they didn't come in and create problems. They actually came in and discovered problems that we had. So it's not like they brought baggage in with us. They found issues that we had. So to me, you can't compare that.
They brought
I
problems
think
with
you
them.
can compare it.
Let's
They
try to stay
brought
focused on the
problems
budget here
The,
right now, okay?
one of the things that, I mean, going forward, I mean, it's one of those things where there is a hard line, and I totally agree with Gina. I mean, as a council, I mean, I don't think that, I mean, it makes any difference to me who the person name is, or who the director, or who's behind the truck. It's more the idea we have a department, and the structure of the department and the dollar figure we're looking at. It's no different when we look at the school, we look at the school budget, we don't ask what teachers are leaving and which teachers are gonna be teaching social studies, we look at a budget. To me, that's what I was going back before. I mean, if the town manager came forward with a public works budget that's less than last year and fits within the requirements that could have deficiencies, is it for us to tell them who's gonna be driving truck and who's gonna be hanging onto the shovel? I mean, to me, that's not my job as a counselor. And, you know what I mean, to me,
I'm
it's...
not trying to do that.
No, I totally agree, but yet, at the other hand, it's really hard for us to, actually separate that being a small town setting we are, you mean?
Right.
But, I mean, I would like to think that as a council, we look at the budget, you know, I mean, the number one goal that, you know, I had in a sense was we're gonna come through this year without having an increase, because that was one step we couldn't make. Secondly, if we felt that, and again, the council's actually not voted, but actually mentioned a couple times about like the 1.75 and that type of stuff, that wouldn't be unfavorable. But to do that, you gotta balance it somewhere else. That means you gotta take away somewhere in the department to make that work. And we always said, you can't have more and have less. You somehow gotta balance it out. So, I mean, to me, it's we have a manager, we hired a manager that hopefully if he comes up with a budget for public works, it's gonna be efficient and gonna work, and it's less than what it was last year, and we're gonna get the same services. To me, I would have to almost agree with that, and then if it doesn't work, well, that reflects on the town manager. I mean,
That's on us too.
but again, but in a sense
But
where
then
it has a
it's too late.
managerial stage.
But then it's
But
too
again,
late.
I think
I
it
mean-
should be reduced to a rubber stamp though.
It should be a rubber stamp, but I don't think that we need to be talking about who's holding the broom, who's driving the truck,
Right.
and who actually is doing that. I mean,
But I think
that's,
we just sign
going back to
off and
Gina,
say
I
it's
don't
not
think,
our-
I just don't think that that's our department.
It sounds like all of this could probably be solved if there were job descriptions in there, and I'm told that there are job descriptions everywhere. The administrative assistant to the town manager must have had a job change, and therefore a change in job description. And I would think an operations manager would have a specific job description, as opposed to what it used to be as a public works manager. And if you guys saw those changes, maybe it would make more sense and understanding, and if they're there already, it could be done in a period of, 2 or 3 days, and have it in your format. And then you could understand what the changes need to be and the dollars that go with them. Or at least better than you do now, because we're all looking at nothing.
The day after our last meeting, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt somebody. The day after our last meeting, I called Steve because I had some concerns, and I asked him some very specific questions, didn't I?
Yep.
And he gave me some very specific answers. So have any of you done that? Have any of you gone or called Steve and asked him what changes are happening? I know that, Mike, I know, I understand, yes.
I didn't get an answer.
Well, I'm not gonna talk about that publicly, Mike.
There's nothing wrong with answering my question.
I have answers for you, but I'll do it one-on-one with you. I'm not gonna do it by email.
But I did.
Not with that tone of email either.
It's fine.
But I will say that I did call Steve, I expressed some concerns, and he expressed an answer to my concerns. I totally understand. Mike, you're a very articulate person, and I told you the other day, you're way more articulate than I am. And some questions were posed when I read that. They certainly were. But I think if you took the time and you talked to Steve and you asked him some specific questions, you get some specific answers. And whether you were answered or not, Mike, I don't know. That's between you and Steve. But I can tell you that some of my concerns were taken care of, and I think you all have the responsibility to do the same thing.
I came in at 6 o'clock today and talked to him, because I had a whole bunch, I had a list of them, and I wanted to...
Did you
answered every one of them.
Okay, there you go. 2 of us.
And do we have, I know I'm beating a horse here.
Yes.
Do we have job, if we do, they lay out all those responsibilities for everybody to see. So I'm thinking it would clarify things a lot if those changes were easily seen.
It's probably not here or there or whatever, but other departments say the town manager, there's the director manager's salary, and then there's administrative salary. The administrative is non-union, and I'm wondering why there's no administrative salary in public works. It's all evidently grouped in with the wages when the administrative is non-union and the other wages are union. It's maybe a bookkeeping thing, but a question that I'm wondering about.
It's line 5102.
5102 is administrative is 0. So is that
Oh.
non-union wages all?
Isn't it going underneath a one budget that actually is now
It
in
is dumping down at the way.
the engineer, basically? I mean, it's basically in one line. Yeah, it is.
Oh,
If you were to
Our
go
wage,
back,
the administrative assistant to public works is in the wage line.
Why is that? Is that,
That's,
That's so that we can't figure out what's going on.
unfortunately, I hate this type of answer, but that's where it's been. And it's.
Oh, well.
now
that's
is
where
that
it's been.
non-union?
I didn't specifically put it in there to hide it. It's been in there for at least the last 2 years.
I'm not suggesting hiding, I'm
No,
just
I know,
wondering why.
I'm just letting you know.
Yeah.
That's
Now, is that a non-union or union wage?
non-union.
Or why should it be grouped in with unions?
because it's a wage. I
Because
would
it's just a
assume.
wage. Whether you're union or non-union, you have a wage.
I'd like to see it separated in future.
$15.32 an hour, or right approximately to that.
I'd like to see it separated in future budgets.
Now, if we were to go back, okay, say we would go back and actually undo some of the changes that you're talking about, at the end of the day, it would still have a negative impact that we'd have to take apart on someone else's budget, because without the changes and consolidations that we're doing, the budget actually we would actually still have to pull money from the budget. Even if we took the wage increases out, we would still have a negative number on our budget that we would have to pull from some department.
I'm not following.
I would assume, right? I mean, as Lori said, some of them balance, but before we actually, on the format of working to a 0% budget or flat, or any way you want to go about saying it, I mean, these decreases in departments, as far as taking away employees or how we want to do it, the savings was more than the amount going back as far as the salaries, I do believe, right? I mean, when we're looking at the savings of the departments, we looked at the savings right around about $90,000, right? So even if we take away the salary, put it back to where it was before and took away the salary increases, we would still have to go back and refigure the budget to take money out of another department to balance it out.
No.
You would have to take off the 1.75 also.
You'd have to take off the 1.75 and the wage adjustments, which together total 92,000. So you had $92,000 worth of increases, 1.75 and wage adjustments, and $92,000 worth of savings with a consolidation effort. So they basically wash each other out. So there isn't going to be a budget.
There wouldn't be any. There wouldn't be any.
Have to be readjusted.
There wouldn't be any differences as far as with the difference of the insurances and all that. That was all calculated into that 92,000.
And I think the solid waste
That's what I was
situation.
trying to understand.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
yeah,
didn't
just,
catch
yeah.
on.
I thought there was actually more of a
No.
more of a spread.
I think the situation in solid waste certainly makes a lot of sense to try to look into something there, because we're having a partial retirement of the director. So that certainly makes sense to me to look for savings there. I'm still not sure about public works here. I can't agree to that at the moment the way it is. If we could find the money to restore that, I would much prefer that.
So you're proposing that there be an increase?
I agree.
I would take it from most of the salary adjustments. I think you get most of the money to put back the person in public works, so you wouldn't have to do that readjustment there. And I would leave solid waste the way it's been proposed.
With all due respect, I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to absorb what was shared with us a couple of workshops ago, where Jessica read what do you call it, Jessica, about the
Personnel
comparative wages.
policy.
So, this has been very difficult to go through this and to try to understand all of it and know how to ask the questions. I think that we're faced with multiple challenges. One, we have policies that we haven't been abiding by, and we're trying to do the right thing. I made the recommendation, right, wrong, or indifferent, a couple of weeks ago when we had a workshop to not just single out a couple of positions, but to look at what it would look like across the board. I hear what Bernie's saying about we can't micromanage the manager if he's got a figure that we have. And I also understand what Mike is saying. He wants us to all know what has gone into this and have it be transparent. I don't think the answers are easy. I mean, we can beat this around with oranges, apples to oranges. I get that whole thing. We're not looking necessarily at the right stuff. But is anybody making a suggestion to change the budget drastically from the numbers that we've been looking at all along? How we arrived at that bottom number, I mean, we're going to micromanage that. This is really messy.
I think we all agree we want to come in at 0%, and that's our goal, and we just have to shuffle around what we're going to fit under that ceiling.
I can't see much change in the Public Works Department budget if the administrative continues as it is, because the pay is supposed to be exact same on the new budget as it was in the previous one. So if there are savings in people retiring or leaving, would be a savings. I mean, I'm confused.
I think that's where the saving in Public Works is there's a layoff, and is it a part-time layoff also? A full-time position and a part-time to leave in Public Works, right?
Yes. I mean,
So where would the
talking about all these
savings be?
salaries, right?
Lost a position and lost a part-time position also.
But that would occur without a change
No,
in
those
management.
would be laid off, and then
But
it
that
would
would-
be pushed down to be from management to be driving now.
To actually allow it to operate the way it is, Doc, those people would have to be rehired, because unfortunately, you either fill it from, I hate to say, the bottom to bring the employees back in, or you actually pick up the slack from the top down. So, I mean, either way you have to, and, I'm just talking from a small business of my own, instead of myself as being management, which it was for years, when we lost employees, instead of actually hiring another employee, I actually ended up going back full-time being as an employee, because you got to fill the position, and if you don't have the finances to fill the position, you fill it from the person that's being a working foreman, classify it whoever you want, the person becomes a laborer to fill the void. So you either got to fill the void from the person up top going down, and the person that's actually well knowledgeable, knows the staff, knows what needs to be done to fill the void, or you leave the person where he is and actually hire another person to come in that basically balances out that same wage. So again, it's on the management wise, what Steve's really doing in these departments isn't really any different than any small business in town's done for the last 3 or 4 years. It's called becoming leaner. It's called, if you're not 100% productive, you're producing salary, you're producing hours. Unfortunately. So, I understand the theory, because, what Steve's kind of doing as far as with a director going back to the idea of actually being a active participant in the duties every day is what the industry is teaching small business to do. It's called using every person you have to be 100% functional and become leaner. So I understand the process. This is one of the things where you go is, if the person and a half on the bottom, not on the bottom, but as a laborer that's leaving, if you don't fill that labor need from someone's already within the department, you got to hire people to come back. So there's not really, to say that we're going to lose those people anyways and it's going to be a saving isn't really true, because you still got to have the person to produce those man hours. Maybe I don't make any sense, but it works for me.
You actually did make
I think
sense.
it,
You actually did make sense.
Well, at the end of the day, okay, for
I don't agree with it.
the wages that we're talking about, whether we take them all out or we put them all back, right? You're not going to impact this current budget, right? It's not a big enough value to adjust it, whether you put them back in or whether you take them out. The question is the council, right? Do you feel that you understand it and you can sell it to the citizens for the increases that you're giving, right? Do you feel they're justified? Do you feel those things are worthwhile, right? And as a counselor, right, that's your fiscal responsibility. I don't care whether it changes the mill rate 0.1% or whether it raises it a mill or down a mill, right? As a counselor, your fiscal responsibility is, do you think the costs in this budget are the appropriate costs to drive the input into the tax rate? right? It's not gonna change the mill rate if you put them in or if you take them out.
No, it's
right?
wash.
It's not gonna do any of that,
Yeah.
right? It goes back to me, as a counselor, understanding how it's built up, why it's built this way. I mean, why are we putting back a position in the police department, right? David's gonna go bonkers here, right? I mean, right, the position, and I could have bad information, right? But my perception of it is the position went back in when we put out the notice that we're gonna potentially continue to try and work with Sabatis. That's all speculation. Do we need to put that position back in? Is that the right thing for this municipality to do right now, when we were given a budget to take that position out? I don't know. That's what everybody's conscience lies on, to justify whether or not you think that's there, right? The payroll position, right? I mean, it's not gonna hurt one way or the other, whether you put the 20 hours back in or you leave the 20 hours out. My concerns are how we're impacting the rest of the employees of the town, how we're gonna maintain our internal controls, right? And our segregation of duties, because we're reducing staff in an already small staff that we have in this area, right? So those are the things that I get concerned about as a counselor, and need to understand and feel convinced that I can go sell that to my constituents. Right, so the dollar value, it's not really the dollar value in my mind that we're talking about. It's the philosophy behind it, and it's whether you guys feel that you're doing the right fiscal thing for the citizens of Lisbon. That's where it boils down to me. And in order for me to do the right fiscal things, there's certain criteria that I have to understand and follow, and do the right fiscal, responsible thing.
I agree with you.
I agree with
Would
it.
it,
Hold on, Tom. I'm gonna hand up for a minute.
We can afford to put back a position in the police department, but yet we can't afford to replace someone in public works. I mean, this does not play out good with me. What would be, is the pay scale the same for the police department, the person that will be added, as the same pay scale as the person that we're losing in public works? Or a person that would be added?
The hardest thing we're gonna deal with, if I may, Mark, is the idea of, and I totally agree with,
I didn't get an answer.
with Mike.
I don't know
Yeah.
that information.
I'd
They're
like
not
to
the
get an
same
answer.
salary.
What?
They are not the same salary.
Which one would be higher?
The
The police department.
Yes.
So how can that be justified? I don't understand it.
The hardest thing that we have is, I mean, we actually, coming into a budget process, I mean, we actually have department heads that actually know the department and know what they need and what they don't. And I mean, that's why we pay department heads. We actually have a manager that overviews the department heads. So to me, when it comes to us, it's not me to second guess the manager and the department heads to determine what needs their budget to be worked. I mean, there's no question about it. At the end of the day, we have to justify whether or not, you know, our budget is fair or it's not. To say that we don't need this person goes back 20, you know, however many years in the budget, saying that we are just overdoing our budget in a sense, okay? So the idea of saying that, you know, that we've been wrong for a long period of time is to me kind of way beyond us. But the idea is that we have to take the information that we have, and it's not, when you start looking at every department and second guessing that department's head, and the decisions that the department head and the manager have to give us the information, I mean, to me, that is crossing the line of micromanaging. Maybe not, but yet, how do you, I mean, I love the expression, again, I'm not good, Mike, I mean, one of my first budgets I came in and, you know, I had like pages of notes because I didn't understand it, and Mike basically said, look, you know, the town manager actually put out a budget. You either agree with the number or you don't. If the budget's what you asked for, you gotta let the town manager do his thing, in a sense. And I agree with that, but yet, it is like Lori said, a fine line. But I mean, to go back and actually say, you know, why is this person staying in and staying out? I mean, I'm not sure if that's really what our job is tonight. I mean, I don't know.
I'm only saying it from a fiscal position, right? We were presented a budget without a position.
That's right.
And I feel the position's going back in based on speculation. Is that the right fiscal thing for council to agree to?
No, it
Based
isn't.
on,
It's not.
right, what your objectives are as council. That's all I'm saying.
I think it is our
About
job
taking
to
a
provide
vote.
oversight to
I'm
the
not
manager.
saying whether
It's
or not we should
anything against
have,
Steve,
right?
it's just that is our job, and if we just rely on trust, that's, we're not doing our job, and that's how I
Can
feel.
I ask a
Mark.
question then? We still have work
Can
to
you
do
hold on just,
now.
can you hold on just a second, Lori Don's been waiting here for a while.
I've listened to all this going on here. I know we have to go in one direction, not keep going around and around. But I agree with Mike, and I've listened to, I think the idea, you guys and us guys, is get the philosophy straight. I mean, whatever it is the philosophy is right with the board, get it right, and leave the management to the management, quit trying to be selectmen. You cannot be a selectman and do this job. And the last thing is, the thing that really seems to be in everybody's craw is the salaries. Not the 1.75%, but the selected positions that are going up. And I agree with Gina in that maybe we should just leave them at 1.75 for now and make it a concrete, absolute plan that it'll all be reviewed and selectively increased. Just my thought. Because that seems to be what's got the public going too.
Lori?
The question I had was, yes, we did come forward with one less position in the police department. And I hear what you're saying, Mike, about speculating, but will we have more information as we come to the point where we're going to do a final vote on this budget? Are we gonna have more information about whether that's a more firmed up plan? Or is it gonna, our budget gonna be finalized, still in speculation? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, it's not all speculation. It's not all based on
Sabatis is supposed
the
to save us
Sabatis
money.
position, or what we're trying to do with Sabatis. And no, you will not
Adding
have
a police
concrete
officer is
data
not
whether we're going
saving us
to move forward with that or not by,
Huh?
you're supposed to vote on your budget by the 17th,
Ribbon.
okay? I think you have to do the schools on the
They
17th.
have their own police.
Yours, I
department.
think you can put off,
Consolidating.
but,
Yeah,
We gotta do the school before that. They have to vote.
no, the 17th,
May 17th.
May 17th.
Oh, May, okay.
Right.
All right. I thought you were, sorry.
No. It's quick. The school's all about timing,
Yeah.
so,
To hear your
So
comment.
is there a possibility to have a workshop in between all of that to review this whole plan as far as overseeing all of these salaries that should be brought up? All that's been discussed tonight, is there a possibility? of
that's
doing
up
that?
to you.
I mean, that seems to be the problem. The problem is that people don't understand it, they don't know how it's gonna work, how long the time period are we gonna do this over, where's it gonna come from, who's gonna get it? I mean, looking at this, some of these salaries, I understand the concern, but some of these people, in my opinion, are worth more money than they're getting paid here. They're educated people, they've been in this town for a long time, and many of them, and one in particular, produces some good-sized revenue in this town. So, I don't know, I think we need to make the time to sit down and have a workshop about it, that's what I think, because nobody seems to understand it.
And I think even if we understand it, the citizens don't understand it, and that's a part of our problem here, is that we have to sell it to the citizens.
How do you sell something to a citizen that hasn't got a raise in 3 or 4 years, that you're gonna give a particular employee a $10,000 raise? These people are flipping out over this stuff.
But how many people actually spoke at the public hearing about the
They're not
actual
gonna
problem?
speak
I mean,
for-
it was, but again, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to me, you get a balance. I mean, there's some happy balance along the way. I mean, and I don't care, and that's the biggest problem with this world right now. There's so many people that are so far to one side to the other, there's never finding a center. And, you know, do we actually know that we have some type of deficiency? We do. There's no question about it. Can you actually single that out to one person? It's very difficult. I mean, can there be a plan to make it better? I mean, one of the things I brought up to Steve is, and I even had mentioned to Mike to see if it's possible, is going through this budget, instead of actually putting names on the hat, to actually come up saying, this year we're gonna appropriate $20,000 to be put aside in this year budget to actually start working towards, so we can have workshops and understand the process, but at least we have money budgeted, that we can actually start fixing this. Like you say, come up with a concrete plan to do it. You know, is that possible or not? I mean, because the last thing I wanted to do, I told Mike, the hardest thing that's hardest to do is come in and actually put names on all these tickers of the people. Let's just say, hey, look, if we have a problem, let's designate $20,000 this year to put aside, and that's just a number, and just say, look, we will work forward through the year, or the beginning of the year, to determine where this is. What it does, it actually gives good faith to the employees that know they're underpaid, that we are working towards it, and kind of going back to our rules in the sense of that we know there's an issue and we're working towards fixing it, but it's not the idea of actually lining the people up and saying, well, I don't like him, but I like him better, so he's going to get the raise. And that person, I mean, to me, it's as much as we're not supposed to be about personnel, the budget's really working out to be a lot about personnel. You know what I mean?
It's your biggest cost.
You know, and it is, but I mean, not just personnel as a sense of what they're doing, but names. I mean, and I don't know if that's a possibility, and I mentioned to Mike, because he has a lot more history and a lot more knowledge in the budget than I would, if that would be, instead of actually just trying to pick the person that you're gonna help, you know, designate saying, this is our fund that we're putting aside to talk more about it, to actually try to work on a plan to fix it. And if that's still doable or not, I don't know, but to me, that was one way of actually washing away the names and who it was gonna be.
And I just want to say, I think we've been, before I was here though, I know for the past decade, people have been working on trying to get this stuff straightened out, trying to get more equitable salaries, and it's just gone through all kinds of different variations, and all kinds of, every permutation you can think of has been done and bandied about, so you know, I think there's a long history here.
Didn't you say earlier, somewhere along the line, that there were several, or quite a few raises and things that needed to happen within the employee, in this group, but only certain ones were really on fire, needed to be done right away, so next year there would be others?
There are some that were really very far off, and those are the ones that I'd hope to make adjustments.
So clearly you think something needs to be done as a whole, more than just those positions.
The ones that the second round of choice recommendations
Yeah.
were the ones that I felt needed adjustments based on the numbers. Others I felt were within the range of what they should be, and I left them alone.
I did that.
I've been sitting here, I haven't said hardly anything. I've been just kind of taking it all in. When I first got elected, I asked a young lady, and I mentioned it to you, and she got hit pretty hard in last year's taxes. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She says, don't let them go up this year. We're not going to let them go up this year. She don't care, or she doesn't care who gets what or anything. She does not care at all. She just wants the taxes to stay where they were last year. And she got hit pretty hard. So I think, yeah, we could have another workshop and do a few finite things. But I think it's pretty good. All in all, there's things that could be better, but it's a learning process for me. So I have to just sit here and take it in. But I'm just saying, you know, and the people out there, they just didn't want it to go up. I don't think a lot of people care about anything, as long as their bottom line is gonna be the same.
That's what people have told me too, Roger.
They
That's
just want the
exactly it.
bottom line to be the same for this year.
Over the past couple of years, we've gone through the budget, and we didn't give any raises to a lot of our people, and I think they were very gracious, may I say, to be as, you know, evenly tempered about this as they were, because people are out there struggling hard, and there's a lot of unsung heroes in this town that work for us year after year and do their job, and they're very devoted to their job. And when you pinpoint individuals and give large increases, that just slaps these people even harder. And I think that that is an insult to the people that work every day to make sure that our roads are plowed, that our garbage is taken care of and stuff, that when you do this, it is a real insult to these people. You can't just overlook that, because these people put themselves out there for the last couple of years with no increase. Now we're going to give them a 1.75, and we're going to slap them in the face by giving some cronies a big raise. And I think that's wrong. And I think it's real wrong. I think that these people deserve to be treated equally in the town, not segregated out, or people picked out, or this one, you know, give this one an attaboy or not that one. All these people deserve more. And I think doing it the way we're doing it this year is a wrong way to go. I think that slaps people where you shouldn't be slapped.
Mark?
Yes.
I feel like applauding.
I just feel that some of these people some of them have been here many years. They've been in this town many years. They hold administrative positions. They have a lot of responsibility, and some of them have education behind them. And I just think that accounts for something. This town has been notorious for constantly staying behind in a lot of areas, not just this wage area. But we never seem to quite catch up. We're always backpedaling. We're always, we don't have enough in this fund to cover this, or we don't have enough in that fund to cover that because we didn't plan ahead. So if you continue to stay behind on these salaries, it's going to hurt everybody in the long run because you're not catching up. You're not making the playing field even. And when you have people that have been here for a long time, yes, I agree, but if people don't have the qualifications that some of these people have, then maybe they need to, go get more qualifications for the job they're doing or get another job that requires qualifications. It's not like we're giving cronies. I wouldn't want to call any of our town employees cronies because none of them are. They're all worthy for what they do receive. But I just think it's just another part of the game, another part of getting behind and trying to play catch up. And just as you said a few minutes ago, Mark, that's what we've done. That's what this town has notoriously done. And we have to eventually catch up to these standards at some point. And I know the economy is tough. But as Roger said, that's what I've heard, Roger. People don't want their taxes to go up. And we haven't done that.
And I don't think
So
they
how much
can.
more? Do we have to have the perfect budget? I wish we could. But reading the newspaper and some of what the other towns and cities are going through, we have got a lot less problems than they do. So I think we should consider ourselves thankful to have the budget that we have and the zero increase that we have, or do not have.
Just as a follow-up, if you're gonna leave the wages and the salaries with the increases you recommended, I just think there needs to be a really, really solid plan to implement the rest of it, or study the rest of it, and present it to the council in some form or another over the next year, so it doesn't just, well, I've got some more to do next year, or I don't have anything to do, and forget about it, because obviously there are other people out there that are in some kind of shape of needing to catch up to. So maybe there needs to be an implementation, even if you do what you're doing now.
I agree with that.
Don't forget, we're looking at some bond issues. We're looking at buildings that need repairs. We're looking at a lot of other things that need to be done in town, all within this budget.
Further discussion on the budget?
I've got a ton of questions.
Sure.
But, that everybody's off, I don't know if we're off the salary thing, or everybody fixed with that, or what.
Now's the time to bring them out.
Today's the day.
Well, I also have a recommendation, if you're gonna go with the salary over 2 years, I've taken a slightly different approach than the town manager, that will reduce the overall budget, which I sent out an email, and only brought like 10 copies, so I don't know how many. Tupperware.
Do they have one?
Doesn't have one down there. You got one down there. Need another one I thought was for Jessica. So, what I tried to do here is I took each one of those positions, right, and over a 2-year period, I did it in 4 steps over the 2 years. So if you turn to the second page, forget the summary for right now. And if you take the positions that we were looking to increase by 10,000, right? The fire chief position, the parks, and the recreation. And so what I recommend is if you gave them a weekly increase of $38.46 for the first 26 weeks, right? We have $999 of cost. and then you give them another step after the first 26 weeks. So for the last 26 weeks, then it's 76.92, right? Because you're doubling that, you're adding up that 38.46 onto that week again, right? So you go to 76.92. So that's $1,992.99.92 for the last half of the year, for a total of just under $3,000 for year one, for a salary increase, right? And then in year two, starting with their base ending in year one, you do the same thing, another 26 weeks at the 38.46, and for the first half of the year, the second half of the year, you do the same thing again, and so you have a total salary increase in the second year of almost $7,000. However, the impact to the budget from where you ended on the first year is just under $4,000. So you end up giving the person, it's pennies, but $9,999.60, right? But the impact in each of the budget years, right, is a lesser number, right? And so.
This is an impact per person.
Right. So then you take, right, and so you have that, you do the solid waste ops manager the same way, right? For the increase, we're looking to give that position of roughly $750 some odd dollars, right? That person would get a $6.75 an hour raise per week, right, for the first 26, right? It follows the same philosophy, and you can see what the salary increase total for the first year and what the budget impact is for the first year, and then in steps 3 and 4, what that is and what they get for a total salary.
So you put all of this in the second year, or most of it in the second year?
Well, it's going to compound itself, right? Because you're starting with the base after you've increased it the first year, and you're doing it again. But when you talk about the budget impact, you subtract it from the first year's budget impact, and the impact of your budget is still a lesser number, right, in that scenario. So if you do that for all of those positions, then when you go back to the summary page, right, and you look in the second column, right, where it says budget impact for the 2011-2012 time frame, the total budget impact is only $13,901 in the 2011-2012. And then in your 2012-2013, it's only $18,535, which and you're giving out a total salary increase of the $46,339.
So you loaded up the second year, but you're still.
Right, but it's still lesser than just splitting it in half both ways. And they're getting they're getting more money,
Second year.
over time, right, each 26 weeks. So, if council wants to stick with that, the raises that are out there, I would recommend an implementation approach like this into the budget. Would be my.
Is there any, Mark, is there any downfalls of doing it that way as far as for calculating benefits or insurances? I'm just wondering if there's, with the software we have, you would think that it would be easy to implement, but it's probably not, right? Is it?
Well, you're making adjustments every 26 weeks.
Yeah.
How hard would that be to put it in the computer and payroll and all that stuff?
It would just be an administrative task of tracking and monitoring and making sure you have the updates and.
There's not any impact when it comes to recalculating the amount of money that's paid for Social Security, and what happens when it comes to the rate. They use the total amount of wages paid in the previous year.
So, looking at this, Mike, if this is less of a budget impact over a period of time, and without going over in detail exactly what people are doing it with, going back to is there a way that we could agree that we actually put 15,000 or whatever dollars aside in a particular line to move forward with the plan that we come up after? It just seems strange, not strange, but not really productive to do the budget process at this point. If we, as a council, if we agree that we ought to make some investment into this, can we put a dollar figure to that, agree on it, and then after our budget goes through to have a couple of final workshops to make sure that we are heading in the right direction? Is that possible?
I think you could put a line item in either the town manager's budget or under elected officials or whatever, that, you know, call it what I used to call a 500 account, where it's a specific item only, and it would be used for salary adjustments, and you could put that money in there so that it's appropriated, right? And then you could reapply it to whoever you assigned it to, based on however your philosophy is to go about doing that.
So, I mean, in good faith, moving forward with this budget in a sense of actually trying to take care of the differences we have and trying to find the least impact to the public and be able to sell it in a way. I mean, it is council in somewhat agreement that we actually could move forward in a manner this way, just so we can kind of come to some agreements on this. And
So
then,
if I understand what you're saying, and I'll just use the example that I just passed out, you would put in roughly $14,000 for this year to go look at adjusting some wages.
Correct.
Based on working with the town manager or whatever. And
With
understanding
reports we
what
have
it is
to move forward and
whatever.
implement it. Because I don't think, whether it's the second or third week or the sixth
The
week,
thing-
you could readjust those numbers small enough to actually still make the scale go out over the year. Whether or not we may have to do it a little bit differently, but I mean, I would just like to be able to move beyond this from the budget. And I mean, one of our last workshops, we as a council, besides you that weren't here, pretty much voted as a group that we had a concern and that we needed to move forward with somewhat. And going back to kind of our united council process where we actually look at each other and actually kind of do a straw poll that we all thinking on the same page, and I realize you weren't here, I would like to think that we don't go back and just say, well, last week thought it was a great idea as a group, but this week it doesn't make any difference. We've already had enough experiences of that in a short period of time that we don't need to go back. I mean, is there a happy road by saying, look, we're gonna do this, we'll put some money aside, so in good faith that we're trying to make this fix, and we're not just saying that we have a problem that we sometime need to be approached, but we don't know when that time will be. I mean, is that something the council, I mean, as a council, I mean, the advisory board has already come back and gave us their recommendations last time to a certain point of where the concern was. I mean, I'm just wondering as council if that'd be doable.
I think we were already in agreement that an adjustment needed to be done. I think that how we do it, how it's sliced and diced is probably what the issue is.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not hearing Mike say that he's not in agreement for doing it necessarily. I think it's maybe how it's being done and the timing of it, or knowing more about it so that we can get straight face selling. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just want to make sure we understand. I mean, I want to understand. I don't want to speak for
If you did, this is a great plan for saying that we could do that in the future for other positions that need this too. Whether you have to appropriate money on a long-term basis or not is another question, because hopefully not all these positions are behind the 8 ball, that they would be able to take the same increases.
Those are.
Okay.
Every department, everything in the town is that way.
So you put the money in there, say he needs $46,000, or he needs $13,000, whatever he needs for the year, you put that in his account and say, go get it. And then next year, well, I'm gonna do all this with these positions and I need this X dollars, then you put that in there and say, go get it.
I don't think we're actually doing it as a go-getter. I think it's the idea of going back to Mike's philosophy, the idea of doing some workshops after the budget to understand the process and understand the full scope and understand how we're gonna go about this and, you know, a process so we can actually feel better as a council that we are actually moving forward in the right way, but not agreeing with it and say, well, it's too late now, we never actually put no funds aside, so next year we'll look at it
All of the
differently.
priority positions have been identified,
Well, but
extreme priority.
Fern's recommending
And
we
then-
put some value in
Right,
a
right,
holding
right.
bucket to then go
Right. But
further.
if next year, the secondary, if you did this study, the
Right.
secondary
Yeah.
level of positions would need X dollars that you put in the budget next
Right.
year, plus whatever's left over
So,
from that.
so what happens if next year comes along and we have a lot harder situation than we have this year, and there is no dollars,
Well,
then these people,
it's a lot better
where
than
we left
having no
them.
plan.
Exactly, you gotta have some type of long-term planning.
Right.
I mean,
It's like
at
the
least
fire
starting on
department
a
not
plan.
planning for
You
fire.
can't- Whichever way you use, whether you just cut it in half and you put it in, or whether you kind of
Yeah,
take this
exactly.
approach, you got that same situation, right? Next year, if we only put in the money based on cutting it in half, and next year we're in a harder situation and we say we can't give out the money, well, guess what, we can't follow through with what we started.
That's why
Are you
I,
making promises you
I mean,
can't keep?
That doesn't stop anything from happening, but it's, if council feels that raises are appropriately needed, and they understand that they're appropriately needed, then it's okay to budget for them, and then whatever happens, happens based on where the total budget falls.
okay, but don't you agree with me, Mike, though, that if you look across the board, the whole town, every employee is probably could deserve a
Well,
raise?
and I would look at it in two ways, Roger, right? I would look at it, you have 22 non-union people? Something, or something in that range. To me, it's the non-union people that are injustice, because the union people have had, and have in the past, for years, always had a negotiated contract that gave them raises. They were very willing for 1 year to open up their agreements and elect to not take any increases that year, and now we're back into negotiating increases with them. So I'm not necessarily sure that they're underpaid. If we want to have the town manager go off and do a survey on all of those
Well,
positions.
you did a survey before I got here on certain union positions, and adjustments were made the first year I was here to some of the union positions based on area comparisons.
Right, that's right.
And those adjustments were made the first year I was here. So
they're
adjustments do
probably
get made
staying
in other
pretty up.
areas.
So they're probably staying pretty up, close up, with the exception of the 1 year that they elected not to take any. So they might have.
And there were many
fallen down
towns
by
that did the
1.5%,
same thing.
But
There
there
were
were other
increases.
towns that did the same type of thing. So I've always said that it's our non-union people that have never been treated appropriately. And we did a salary survey, and we did a true-up years ago, I want to say back in 2001, 2002 timeframe, someplace in that era. And we brought everybody up to what we called a midterm average, based on the survey that we had an outside consulting committee do. But at the same time we did that, and this is how we justified it with the citizens back in the old town meeting, was we used to pay 100% of everybody's insurance, right? And it was time to get out of that business, right? Because insurance was very costly, and interest rates were, premium rates were going up. And the rest of the world around us wasn't paying 100% anymore. So we instituted a plan to start to make these people pay. We instituted it in the union as well, then to the non-union people to start paying a percentage of their premium. We started off at a 5%. So when you gave them the raise and then you made them pay a percentage on their insurance, right, the raise wasn't as big as, right, because they got out of pocket coming here and they got in pocket coming here, and the two net not to the full raise based on that adjustment, right? And then we increased that over time, so that now I believe everybody is paying roughly about 20% of their premium, which is basically the industry standard. So we took steps to do that. We're not in a position now where, based on the injustice, we have any other way to offset that by doing something like that. But again, we put together a plan and approach to go do all this. And we understood it all.
May I suggest, we're starting one idea and it looks like we're getting ready to go to another. May I suggest you guys have a vote or something, or a motion?
Can't vote.
Decide,
Can't vote.
well, okay, workshop and decide, yes, we're gonna do this, then go to the next one rather than just talking about it and then leave it till next time to do something. At least come up with like a decision or determination what you're gonna do.
See, the problem is that we discuss this stuff and we talk about stuff that we're gonna do, and then we're gonna revisit it, and we never revisit it.
Exactly.
It never gets dealt with, it just gets put on a back burner, and it never happens. And that's what is notorious for this town. We have always done, especially the council, I will say that we do not follow up on a lot of issues that just keep, and that's what creates the problems that we have. We create our own problem, because we don't finish anything. We just keep talking about it and put it off, talk about it and put it off, and it never gets resolved.
We run into too many red lights. They happen every week.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
fires,
just-
brush fires.
Brush fires.
Putting out fires.
Well, and And I think this would be slightly different. I mean, if council, if Fern made the recommendation that it did, the council all kind of agreed with that. It says we're gonna put in $14,000 or whatever, so that we can go work and understand better and move forward with whatever potential appropriate raises are needed. I mean, I think that will happen, right? I don't think that won't happen.
So the budget still would be adjusted to reflect that, you're saying, right?
Well, I mean, in essence, I think you guys
Each
have
department
already
budget.
reflected the budget with those increases, right?
Yes. That's what I mean, we do-
Over a 2-year period.
The only thing it might do is bring it down slightly, because my approach is slightly less in the first year than Steve. And so that's about the only thing different. I mean, I think when I look at Steve, he was talking at 26,000 in the first year, and I'm looking at 14,000. Right? I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it's just a different approach and point.
And it won't change the tax rate.
Right.
It's not gonna change.
Either way,
It's not gonna change anything, right? It's not gonna increase or decrease
When-
any of that.
When
So we're
this,
gonna do this after the fact, after the budget is passed, we're gonna just decide where we're gonna put the money.
Well, I think you were
Is that what you're
recommending
suggesting?
workshops to go through and better understand and do that type of stuff to say where it
The
needs.
thing that we hear it a lot, I mean, is one is people are not fully understanding what's happening, and the idea of we're at a pass right now where we all agree the bottom line of the budget is gonna be where it is. It's the details on how we get there, and I'd just soon move forward with something to say that in good faith we're doing something, instead of actually just having a vote and just throwing it away. I mean, which could happen, may not, I don't know. But I mean, in the sense of actually just moving forward with something and putting something aside, so we have something to discuss. And, you know, if we don't put any money aside, we can have all the workshops we want after the beginning of the year. If we don't have enough funds to do anything, we might as well stay home and watch TV, because we're gonna get as much done.
How do we do this?
We need to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we get the money in it right now? Like, do we just say
Well,
we're
I mean,
gonna?
we would just put, I mean, I believe you just put a line item in somebody's budget under a special account number. or
Yeah,
whatever
but
that-
I mean,
Where are you gonna get the money to fund that?
To add.
It's already,
From all the individual
They
departments.
would take it out of each
Yeah.
individual
Yeah.
person's raise that they've assigned it to now, and they would put $14,000, let's say it goes under elected officials, so it's
Right.
visible to everybody, and we put a line item in the elected officials budget for $14,000, and the description is in there for potential
But-
raise increase.
that's
we
not
pay
what I,
adjustment
But don't you put it on
Yeah,
your
but
elected officials?
does that work
But
with
how do-
We're getting a
contingency?
raise.
how do we vote
Or
on
is
this?
that
We can't vote on it
possible?
now.
I would
And I have
rather,
no idea.
I personally would rather not see a contingency, because if a council elects not to give it out, I don't think it's necessarily money we want to use for.
Well, you won't use it,
Other
you
things.
won't be able to. Part of
Well, you
the, part
can
of
use it
that,
for contingency, right? I mean, contingency is for emergencies that come up. If we, you know, blew the fire sprinklers or something here or whatever, we had to repair them, and we needed money to go do it, that's what contingency is supposed to be used for. At least it always was, what I thought it was used for, so I wouldn't want to color the money.
I don't think I need to even pick a line, as long as in theory that's what we're doing. I mean,
Right.
that's however it comes
And
about.
and most
Yeah.
of that is just so it stays above board
Yeah.
with the citizens, so that when they hear about our approach and how we're doing
You can see
it,
the
that
line.
it's there, you can always go back and reference it, and then you can see where it goes once
So it's not
we work
CIA.
through whatever it is to decide where it's gonna go.
We'll go around the table.
So
I'm in
let's
favor,
be clear.
go ahead,
Wait,
Lori,
wait, wait,
sorry.
wait. You already have the budget, the increases in the budget. And you are proposing to add another 14,
No.
roughly.
No.
We're
No,
gonna
no.
decrease
Back it out
the
of each
increases.
individual budget.
Decrease all of these
Consolidated.
positions by the 1/2 value that was originally presented, right?
Well, I think what we're accomplishing is the idea that
So we're
if we,
decreasing by the $26,000.
I think it's gonna be, to me,
$100.
either
We're
do
gonna
it
put
or I don't think there's
$14,000
room right now
in
that
a
it's separate
separate line
line
item
going through. So to me, it's either a
to
small
go
change,
off and work through it and understand.
because by feeling
Pretty
what we
dense
get
and I don't
around the table,
understand
it would
it.
probably would just be
Because I
doing
must be
some
pretty
comparisons,
dense, I don't understand it.
which I would hate to see
They're
that
gonna do
happen.
that without increasing the
if we could
budget.
get a little step,
Yes.
They're gonna take the money that they have put in the budget to give all these increases.
Correct.
planning to go forward
Understand
with
that?
next budget.
We have now in the budget
Yeah.
to give
Getting the
X number of people $10,000 a year
what's going
increase,
around, I
plus
don't think it would happen.
1.75.
That's
Yeah.
all has to be
Okay.
done.
Oh, I
Now what they're
It
gonna
can be
do,
done in
instead of
specific
giving
I
planning.
would
full
hope that we would at least get something
$10,000
from it.
increases, they're gonna reduce them to
Yeah,
half.
but we
and
make
then
at least
bring it
something,
up to
right?
the scale that
Up
they
here,
set up.
Right.
I mean, under the-
So-
And the same amount of money will be put in the box
Precedents
to be
for
used
some that we may not carry
in the
into
future.
But we do we have the money in the budget as the budget stands?
Yes, there is right now. It's already in
She's
there.
worried about if we change council
Actually, less
based on this approach and philosophy. Do we run any risk?
So
of
there are
not
7 people on
being
this
able to
list,
go
and there are
forward with it?
22
And you do, but I mean,
non-union
you run the
wages,
same
so
risk
what
of-
when are the other non-union
But
gonna
you're also
start?
running the same risk of you not knowing where you, I mean, you run the same risk as if we do it the same way you're proposing, right? If you put it in half now, we're gonna get half of it, right? But next year, council may not agree with that approach, right? Based on whatever change out happens or whatever, you may not agree with that approach, so you still only get that half, right? So, I mean, I don't see any real impact.
You still have to agree to appropriate it, wherever you put it.
Right.
Except if we put it in the lines like we have recommended, it's there, it's designated for that. If you take it out of that line and you put it in a separate account, you have to authorize us to move that funding
Correct.
forward.
That's right.
And then you take the risk if the council changes,
Well,
of
I
it
hope
not
we're
being
gonna-
appropriate.
I hope we're gonna try and do this before the end of June. Would be my recommendation, because it's
Oh,
stuff
so
we
you want to
get
do
in
this
place.
before the budget gets approved?
Well, not necessarily before the budget gets approved, but I mean, if I think it'd be approved by June 17th, we might approve it June 18th, right? Or what, depending on how we can schedule it and work it and make that all happen. I mean, I'm not looking to hold this until, next May, I don't think was your thought process to go work through this, right? I mean, I would imagine you're talking about working through and bringing council up to speed to understand it.
So when the next year budget process comes up, you have that same recommendation for some amount of money to go in.
You'll have already designated what that amount is.
Right, we already know what needs to go in to finish that, and there may be
Plus
additional
more.
stuff you gotta designate to go in. But I think from Fern's approach here is just trying to get us off the dime here.
Yeah, let's get off,
Get moving.
let's move forward with something.
And if we go through the right planning exercises between now and July or whatever, then now we have a plan going forward of how it's all gonna work in subsequent
And
years.
they're most likely
Now,
to approve.
now did we, do we
And then
have
you could
a basic
appropriate right back
agreement?
into the line items of the salaries.
Now, how about the public works? Is that gonna stay the way it is and just do the transfer?
Well, we don't know where we get the money to keep it, is the thing. I mean, I suggested taking it out of the salary increases, but people don't seem to be in favor of that, so. Plus we don't, I don't know where we can get it without raising the overall budget.
Public works,
We're
most of the people
planning on
looking at it,
increasing.
they don't have
If
a
we
problem
get
with it.
If we get the salary increases, then I don't know where we get the money to, do we want to keep public works the way it is? We gotta come up with $50,000 from somewhere without raising the
I mean,
budget.
Again, my only concern was the plan and approach, but, I mean, if you're hearing, and you've been there before, and other people are hearing, I mean, I'm only bringing up my concerns, because I
Yeah.
wasn't there before to bring them up, right? There's nothing in here I'm saying today that I wouldn't have said in any other meeting that I was in earlier if I'd have been there, right? I'm not, so,
'Cause we're only really dealing with, well, a town engineer
if,
and at the most, 2 other people. And they seem to be all on board with it.
I will stand behind it, but I'll say, just keep your eyes open.
I
Yeah,
don't think that what the process we're going through is an unknown process. I think the process we're going through is very familiar with more the private industry more than probably the municipality. But again, it's.
My whole philosophy behind it is I would like to understand it more, so when I get asked on the street or I get a phone call, I can better explain it, and I can justify that and feel confident that I'm explaining, right? Correct. Because I don't always want to say, go see the town manager, right? I'm the counselor, I'm representing the people, I'm supposed to know what's going on.
When you're being told that you're lining your pockets, you gotta tell them why you're not lining your pockets.
So everybody
you
got
pull
that.
your
If I had my
pockets
pockets, I'd
out
have
and
a
say,
roof
"Chase
over it.
Where?
Everybody got that.
Yeah.
So when does the council want to meet for another workshop? I guess that's what we're looking at.
I guess the question I would actually pose to the chair is, if we do come to this type of agreement, and we're actually in some type of agreement that, however you want to consider the consolidation, I mean, we really didn't discuss anything different than we have in the past workshops. I mean, unless it's something that's going to be really drastically different, you know, I guess unless it's some...
I think Steve's asking a slightly different question.
Yeah.
He wants to know when we're going to get together to discuss the salaries.
All the
and stuff
things that
like
you feel you don't know.
Anything that you want to
Yeah.
pull out, right?
But is that
Or whatever.
the items that you want to discuss before the budget? I mean, is that, I mean, if we're working on this other process where we can actually talk about it after the budget, have money is there, I mean, do we need, I'm just wondering, at this point in time, is there a council that drastically thinks that we need to actually look at a different number in the budget? I mean, the budget that we have proposed, the dollar figure that we're going forward with, I mean, to me, it's even if you don't know the details, and that dollar figure, I don't think is gonna change. But, I mean, the details, I mean, the devil's in the details as far as the, I mean, I myself, when I see the consolidation, I think it's fair. I mean, I think as far as wage increases, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. Can we do it all at one time? Maybe not. Should we have a better plan? To me, it's like the idea of setting a fire department long-term capital. We're doing the same thing for our employees. I mean, they are our employees, they are our benefits. We have to figure a long-term plan on how we're gonna keep them. I mean, and so, you know, we have to plan that out. So I don't, myself, see anything that another workshop that would be drastically change what we're looking at today. I mean, that's my own opinion of the budget. Are there other workshops needed maybe after we get through that? Absolutely, ongoing. We should have a couple workshops a month or one or whatever, but I mean,
Yeah, I think if we're gonna break it out as a separate item, we can definitely wait until after the budget is done to deal with that separately, if that's the whole point of that.
is there any other things that you as chair would like to see us have a workshop on in this budget?
I don't have anything further. I brought up my concerns. If someone has other, yes,
What would happen if we gave everybody the 1.75 and put the full amount of the larger increases that we were talking about in the magic box to be discussed in the future?
So you're gonna give them more than we have. That's, no, that's not. That's okay. No, it's just, that's basically what we were talking about, but not the full amount.
Well, the thing of it is that every time we bring up a particular issue,
Yeah.
we say, oh, we can't talk about it, we can't talk about it, we can't talk, well, when are we gonna be able to talk about it? And as a council, I think that we ought to be able to talk about these things. If we have to go into an executive session to do it, we should do it and talk about
And you've
it.
got to drag in every employee that you discuss, Roger.
Well, if that's what,
We manage the people, not the council. We make the recommendations based on what we think is the most efficient way to restructure and to get the same level of service with less people. And we've been able to do that over the last 3 budgets. This is the 4th budget where we're still going to be able to maintain a level of service, and we're not increasing, and you're losing people on top of that.
It would seem to me that your next workshop, or a workshop, would be on this matter as it carries forward in the next year. You already identified what needs to be done this year. The next workshop ought to be for what goes forward with the other positions that need to be adjusted. And it can be,
I
whenever,
would agree with that.
as long as it happens.
Does anyone feel they have more issues that we really need to discuss, or are people
I
feeling
think
ready
it's
to
a lot.
vote on the budget, or what? I'm trying to feel.
I'm not ready to vote on the budget yet. I still have more questions, but I'm still trying to get, I mean, I don't want to run off table here with, bring up the next item that I have in my mind, but without, if everybody's not satisfied with where we stand.
Gina, what's your thoughts? You're being quiet.
I just don't know. I think that, I do agree that we all have to understand what's happening. I like the thought of putting it in a little magic box and, you know, dealing with it later. But I think that we can't micromanage everything. We cannot. That's not our job. Our job isn't to micromanage every employee in every department. And as Fern said, this is a trend. Businesses all over are running leaner. They're reorganizing management in teams, and more people are doing more work for sometimes more money or less money. It depends on the company. But as Fern said, he owns a business. His family owns a business. He's doing jobs now that the low man on the totem pole was doing before. My husband owns a business. He's doing jobs that he used to hire people for, that he can't afford to hire people for. So to do what Steve is trying to do, I totally understand. But we as a council have to understand it to only a certain degree. Steve's job is to be the manager. Our job is not to be the manager. If we did that, we'd have 10 different opinions of how many of us there are here. That's not our job. That's Steve's job. But to understand how the money's allocated, yes, that is our job. So to continue and just keep beating this dead horse is ridiculous. We just need to move on.
Just contradicted yourself, though. You said it's our job to dictate where the money goes, and then you turned around and said it isn't.
In a sense that how the money is spent, but I can't tell Steve what particular person to spend it on, Roger. You might
She's saying she has to
manage it.
understand.
Okay, last year, we gave a specific increase, and it didn't happen.
That's because you weren't allowed
Until-
to do that.
Yes, we were. We voted as a council to do it. Because it was a work increase. And this went on, and it did not happen. But all of a sudden, I'm not gonna start,
Now, hopefully, let's work on this budget.
but that's what happened
Challenging
last year.
But I don't know,
So
maybe
are
I
you
did
with
contradict myself, but I
You
hope you
didn't.
understood. If
You actually said you gotta look at the whole picture, not every line in between.
I was
Pretty
gonna say,
much.
what I heard you say was there's a bottom line, and how he gets to spending that bottom line is not our business, as long as he meets that bottom line.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you're all right. You're
Figure it
okay.
out,
You're-
figure it out, okay? I'm getting really tired. It's early tonight, but.
So what
Micromanaging
you're
is not what I
saying,
want.
Roger, just so I understand what you're saying, is that you're fearful if we don't earmark this money in the box, that it's not gonna happen?
It did
Or
last
if
year.
we earmark it, you're still afraid that it's not gonna
Last
happen?
year, we earmarked it, and it didn't happen. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. We voted as a council, and it still didn't happen. So, what makes me feel warm and fuzzy about this?
Back it's on tape.
Does anybody else know what he's talking about? I don't, duh. I'm not sure I get it.
So is there any, do we have any, does anybody agree with anything that we move forward with? How's that? Do we have a baseline here?
If the council wants to give raises, I think Mike's suggestion is a good one, combined with Fern's idea of putting it in a separate box, we can deal with it later, you know. That makes sense to me.
The 1.75 would be,
Well, right, not the 1.75,
The automatic, it'd be
right,
the
not,
difference.
right, the difference.
okay, just to make sure
Just the
that,
salary adjustment, not the hourly.
maybe do a quote for a whole.
Yes.
But just so we can move forward and maybe get to the next item.
Yeah, how do people feel on that?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you agree with that? Roger, I assume you're not in agreement with getting raises at all? Did I heard Mike right?
I think we ought to give the 1.75 across the board.
Right.
Stop right there.
Okay, Mike, how do you feel?
I'm okay with that.
Lori? Gina? You on record?
I'm on record,
Just-
yes. I'm for giving raises, but through what? Through, healthy raises, I guess.
Controlled manner,
Controlled, yes, is the word.
which I think is that's what we're striving for.
Which is a combination of what Mike has said and a combination of what he has said, I would say. Maybe I contradicted myself.
You did, you're all good.
Okay.
All right, so-
At least I understood where you're coming from. How's that?
Okay, so there's definitely a majority there for asking, you know, Steve to go ahead and try to work that out however you can on the numbers, two of you, and come up with something there that'll work for that. Any further items for discussion on the budget?
Yeah, you know, another concern I have is on the tax rate. We're saying the tax rate is flat, but, I mean, and I'm just gun shy from last year. I want to make sure that we've done all the calculations for the tax based on understanding the loss of depreciation and the loss of property tax for businesses in town, so that we can really feel comfortable when we say taxes aren't going to go up. That's exactly what's going to happen. So I don't know if you've run through those calculations with Bill and adjusted those. Is that something that can be shared with council so we can see that?
Bill has given us a estimate on the depreciation, which is $2 million in value that we can anticipate from the depreciation of the current equipment. The equipment from...
Can we get a comparison from last year, what all the numbers were, to what they are this year? So we can see what numbers are going down, what numbers are increasing. I mean, I would like to see that so that I know that the way we're working all this stuff, right, this is documentation of how we're estimating our taxes.
We have all the documentation.
And we can see,
And this,
here's what it was.
calculation sheets.
Right, so we can get a copy of those, here's what it was last year, here's what it is now, presently proposed, so that we can, you know,
Yes, we can.
validate that there really is no tax rate increase based on the current budget numbers. I just want to make sure that we've done diligence in that area, based on what happened last year. I mean, I still have questions on the police department, why we're reinstating that position. But
Ask them.
What's the amount of money that we're
Put it on the
back there?
table.
The reason it was reinstated, part of it does have to do with ongoing negotiations with Sabatis. The other aspect of that position is we have lost people over the last 3 years in the police department. And you have lost a sergeant and you have lost a detective. The detectives currently are doing more work than they can handle right now. We are expecting some restructuring, or not restructuring, but assignments of some help from that position. But if the Sabatis thing works, there's going to be restructuring there as well and have to be picked up, more responsibilities. So you're operating shorthanded. Your police chief has been telling you that for the last 3 years. And if you've been reading the reports that come out every month, you can see that we're very busy in the police department. And it hasn't slowed down. That's always the trend when you have a turn down in the economy. And these are things that come from our chief, who's got 37 years in this business. A heck of a lot more than any of us have. And I trust his judgment to ask, make call and request for his personnel needs.
So
Mike brings a legitimate point, though.
Can you explain why it was presented to us initially without the position then? Why did we?
Well, this was
not
before
need-
the Sabatis thing came on, and we were considering cutting those positions. We had considered cutting more positions. We didn't do that. No,
Right,
because
but
there
you
were
presented
changes.
to us down a position, and then once the Sabatis thing went through, the position was added, and now I'm here and we're putting that position in because we've been undernamed. And
Well,
the
there's a
police
lot of
chief who's
reasons.
been here for 37 years says we need that. So I'm assuming the police chief for 37 years said he needed it before it was presented to us.
Yeah.
So you had a reason for taking it out, and you felt that that was appropriate, and now it's being added back in, at least in my opinion, only because of Sabat.
No?
So, I mean, I'm just having trouble following the logic and the justification behind that. I mean, I just don't,
Well, the chief has come to me, and we've talked about the detective work, and all that they have to do, and they're down a person, and I changed my mind to think that maybe we should utilize the people that we have in other capacities to help.
And I want to say that I go along with Steve on this one, 100%.
okay, just a question.
For what
again.
reason?
I mean, I gotta understand.
Because
that, right?
exactly the reasons he gave me. I've been in this town all my life, and he's done a lot of things for me, and I know who he is, and he's very smart, very
Yeah, but
talented.
see, Roger, what you're doing is you're taking and doing the exact same thing that we're criticizing everybody else for doing. You're taking and putting a face on the position.
Yeah.
Take the face off the position. Do we need the
So we
position?
get rid of him, then we have to hire somebody that's got less knowledge.
That isn't,
Personalities,
Right? You get-
I hear what you're trying to do, Roger, and I understand where you're coming from. The thing of it is that this is what we're criticizing everybody else for, is for putting a face on a position.
But again, is it gonna affect the
You know?
budget any?
Yeah, it is. It's a position, it's the price of a position.
Is it gonna affect the tax rate?
What, 60-some thousand dollars a year, or whatever it is?
I have a problem that it wasn't presented in the original budget and then it just got added in. That's what I have a problem
But
with.
there's been a lot changed,
Yeah,
Doc, since the
I mean,
original
I know.
budget. I mean,
Trust me, I know.
there's been a lot of
I'm only
things
asking
changed.
the question to understand why
Yeah.
it wasn't there and why it is there, and make sure I really understand the answer.
The budget
That's all
process is
that's all my
ongoing,
question was.
discussions happen,
I mean, it just
new
seems,
things come to light. It's a working budget, it's not,
Uh,
It's a
we're all
position.
trying to work on it for the best interest.
In kind of another vein, going to the bond issue, do we have a breakdown for the electrical work and the siding on the Lisbon Fire Department building? I'm thinking needs as opposed to wants.
Systematic type of.
They're
approach.
saying that the electrical work is really a need. If there could be enough money found in the budget to do the electrical work and put off the siding, maybe until next year, if they get the garage that they want, they're gonna want it all to be sided alike, and a thought.
I think it makes sense to do it at the same time, because my understanding is they need to get in through the wall, and they don't want to leave a big hole in the building, so they can seal it back up.
I think the people are gonna answer that for real quick.
Well, you may, when it comes to
I
the,
had a question about the police issue. Is there a significant increase? I think the question is it appears, the perception is, which becomes people's reality, that the position has been added back to the budget based on the discussions with Sabatis. Is there a way that we could say there's been an increase in the work that the officers are doing to justify adding back the position? Or was it overzealous, let's say, to think that we could do without that position, and the reality of it is you can't restructure that work?
It's a combination of both. Chief came to me after we pulled it out, asked me to put it back in for a number of reasons, and things that he is trying to accomplish, along with what if we move forward and we do something, so that's how are we going to restructure that? Are we going to turn around and try to hire somebody in an assistant administrative position that this is, with 28 years experience or more?
Where would the savings for us be merging with Sabatis? I'm a little confused.
I don't have those
know
numbers
that
yet.
I just feel like we're spending money in anticipation of something that may or may not ever happen.
I mean,
I don't understand where the savings would be.
that's why I think it's all speculation. I mean, I've heard that Sabatis is dragging their feet in this whole thing.
It takes,
Right.
takes the bad out of the picture. Say if we have a department head, and again, I'm not going either way. I'm just saying if a department head moves forward and said, Steve, you know what I mean, it's great that you actually got rid of all the police cars, we're gonna walk this year. You know what I mean, but I think we really need the cruisers back. You know what I mean, and again, that's pushing out the edge, but I mean, that's a philosophy, okay? Initially, the budget, Steve goes, is what's the best thing I can do? And then hopefully he has to listen to the department heads after to say, you know, either it was the right move or it wasn't the right move. You know what I mean? 'Cause we assume that they're working together, and hopefully they are, and hopefully Steve does take some input from the department heads. I would assume that would be the process. So taking Sabatis even out of the picture, since it is speculative, I'd rather just work on what our needs are. So either our needs are that we need them, and if the department head says we do, and it's someone that's we've needed for the last 28, whatever many years, we either realizing that we didn't need them all this time, or
Again,
we
no
do need
problem
them.
with that.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I would rather work on just take Sabatis out of the picture, just what we need at this point for our budget.
All I asked was a question.
Yeah, no, I
right?
totally agree.
I'm just asking a question, trying to get a solid answer so I understand. Right? I mean, at face value, it didn't seem to make sense.
I
Right?
totally agree.
When I looked at it. So just looking for an answer. So the next item I had is, I still have a question on the payroll process, which we haven't really discussed. And the reduction and all the things we're trying to change here, and the potential impacts to the employees, and our ability to continue to maintain separation of duties and all of our internal controls that our auditors have asked us, or suggested we put in place, and I think we have. So, I mean, I understand going to the bi-weekly stuff, there's a lot of savings there. I mean, there's a culture change for the employees, it takes 2 to 3 months to get used to, going from having money in your pocket every week to now all of a sudden going every 2 weeks. Just like it's a culture change if you're getting paid every 2 weeks and now you get a check every week, now you think you got a ton of money, and all of a sudden you don't have money to pay your bills, right? You know, and administration of all the benefits and the things that we're changing, because we're looking at changing our whole insurance plan this year, right, potentially, and who our provider is and stuff like that. So what, you know, what complications are gonna reside there, and can we really do all that in 20 hours, or should, as I mentioned earlier, should we walk before we run and implement the bi-weekly stuff and make the new changes, but do that with the full staff and figure out how we maintain segregation of duties, internal controls over the next year, and make that other transition run smoothly, and then reduce the position down. That's my only question and recommendation, based on, again, other people I've talked to that run payroll organizations and things like that.
What do the cost, stay the way it is,
I mean, 20 hours of somebody's salary, I don't know, it's
Probably adding
peanut.
just over maybe 20,000.
It's a pretty insignificant amount of money to give us a little security.
When are you gonna implement or when do you plan to implement the bi-weekly payroll?
Once it gets approved and we can start
Right,
putting
I would imagine
it
something.
We can't do it until the council
Right.
modifies the personnel policy to say that we're gonna go, make a change. Right now, it's in the personnel policy, that it's a weekly payroll. So you as a council have to edit that and approve the change to go to bi-weekly. Some things that we are doing to gain efficiencies is a time clock that ties into our software, so there's going to be efficiencies found there. Also, going bi-weekly, that person will not have as many hours needed because the payroll isn't going to be done every week.
I was gonna suggest that maybe keeping the position for 3 months beyond implementation, to make sure that all the folks are on it.
If you budget that though properly though, I mean, that's the thing, I mean,
Right.
but I mean, I don't know, I mean, that's what I'm asking. I mean, one of my concerns was, and it's something that we've been addressing every year since I've been here, and I think eventually it's not gonna be that we wanna do it, it's because we're not gonna have an option, is, you know, a lot of the services that we actually pay twice for in town, you know, we actually have, you know, within a half mile of here, we actually pay a whole department to do pretty much the same thing. Is it the same thing? There's a lot of differences, but at the end of the day, we still have 2 people, full-time staff, doing payroll for town employees. I mean, and a lot of our administration is doubled up and very close, similar, probably very different, but yet kind of similar job descriptions. So, I mean, I would hate to think that we do anything short-term to actually ruin the idea of what could happen long-term. But how that goes about, I mean, I couldn't tell you who works in payroll. I couldn't tell you how it works. I mean, nor do I want to, because it's not my job description as a counselor.
Right.
All I gotta know is, I mean, I gotta trust that the management actually and department heads know what they need to do to get the job done. So, I mean, I can't make recommendations on what they need to do besides the idea of, you know, listening to people that run the department.
Roger?
All I was gonna do is make the statement that Is is the money saving large enough for the inconvenience it's gonna make on the employees of the town?
Is it gonna make an inconvenience, or is it? I mean, that's one of the things we don't know.
I'm not sure it's an inconvenience, I mean, it's gonna be an inconvenience on the employee because it's a
That's gonna
culture
make it
change.
bigger.
It's not really an inconvenience as an inconvenience that you would think of, but again, my only concern is doing this smoothly, having it go with no operational hiccups, and being able to cover and account for it when problems arise. Now, all of a sudden, you're either bringing somebody in, paying them overtime or something like that because you've got issues, or it takes longer to fix things, and you're talking about people's pay, right, and their benefits, you know, and their kind of their livelihood. And I think that's the last thing we want to do. And I just want to make sure that we've got a good plan in place. And my only suggestion is that we put all that stuff in place. And as we see that the benefits truly are all there, then we go make the reduction later. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm only recommending that we transition into it and not fight it off just like that. That's my only recommendation.
So you're more interested in making sure that there's enough staff to do it?
I want to make sure that the employees aren't impacted, right? Right. Not necessarily hasty, but, you know, I mean, because I think they've thought through what they need to do and everything, but I just want to make sure that that transition goes smoothly.
Yeah.
That's all I want to make sure is it goes smoothly, everybody's benefits. I think there's a lot going on with insurance potential changes.
But again, that's speculation. That this
Well, I mean, I think councils,
looking at it,
I think
we are
councils
looking at
agreed,
it.
councils agreed to go forward with the new plan, right? I don't know how you've budgeted in this budget, because we haven't really talked about it yet, but council agreed at earlier meetings to go forward with the self-insured plan, knowing we could pull the additional amount over with out of the surplus, right? So I believe if we go.
You haven't voted on it.
We didn't vote, I don't believe, but we all discussed it and we all nodded our head that we thought that was the appropriate way to go. And I believe you went out and had additional discussions with the unions and they're pretty much on board with it, and they've given you the go-ahead. So, I mean, I was of the assumption that we're gonna go forward with those changes, right? And make those changes and hopefully save the town some additional money.
That would have been a big bite in itself, just to do that for 1 year.
So,
But
I
to
mean,
take
that's all I'm
along with the
looking at it
payroll is
from
a
that
big
standpoint.
bite.
So is the number that is budgeted based on the idea that we are going forward with the
It was actually a
simplification?
minimum, if I remember from the discussions we had, it was basically a average number that would work for either insurance on the mid-road.
Either way.
On the mid-road. It was a neutral price for both insurance. So the budget, either way we voted for, it wasn't gonna be affected either way. It was basically neutral.
I guess I misunderstood them. I thought the sheet like this, here, can I cut this out? The sheet like this had a reduction in it the last time that we got one.
You did.
I
For the
thought-
personnel.
But that's personnel impact.
Yeah, that's lack of losing personnel. That's like going from a full-time
That's
to a
pretty
part-time.
significant though, wasn't it?
Insurance is a lot of money.
Yep.
I mean, when
Yeah,
you
no,
actually take
I
someone
get that, but
full-time to
I was
part-time.
thinking that it was based on some
So,
premium or something.
I mean, with all that stuff potentially going on, right? I mean, if council turns around, again, I'm speculating, if that's the way we want to look at it, just like we're speculating with the police department, if we're speculating, you know, wouldn't we want to err on the side of, you know, caution rather than, you know, having to go do everything and not necessarily have all the right resources to make it happen smoothly for the employees? That's my only point. Again, I'm not saying it's not a bad idea, I'm just saying walk before we run, learn the benefits gained, reduce the position later, right?
Question I have is that if you get into a situation where you're over your head, now what do you do?
I don't know.
What do you do then? Where's Plan B?
We will not be in over our heads. We are decreasing in, I'm not gonna explain it to you, Roger. Really,
Don't
it's
even
your
bother.
concern because it has to do with the operation. That's my responsibility.
And that's why it
No
concerns me.
matter what I tell you, you won't believe me anyway.
No, I won't.
So anyway, my recommendation is to put the 20 hours back in to make sure we have a smooth transition. That's just my recommendation. Understanding all of the things that potentially are going on, just for this year. If things go great, can dump the position next year, reduce it back to part-time or whatever is needed, or work to do further consolidation with the school.
How do people on council feel?
We need to put the money back in the line in case it needs.
To keep the position in a full-time position.
To keep the dollars in the line, so that if it needs to,
Right. Yeah, politically correct.
How do people on council feel?
I agree with them.
You agree? Okay, how do you feel, Roger?
Yeah, I'm along with it.
We asked for a reduction, so it's one of those things where, I mean, I was hoping that we would go with a big program this year, a lot of consolidation, so. I mean, the idea of.
Well, why don't we go do Parks and Recreation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a biggie we can go do.
Oh, absolutely.
Take that one on right now, huh, before the
I
budget,
was just saying
right?
what my hope was, I didn't say what was
Double.
happening.
You know,
The,
they had a lot of double stuff there.
I mean, if you're talking the idea of going back to the idea of putting it into the budget as a line item versus a dollar figure, to me, it's another internal control, as Gina was saying, the idea that it's not, I don't know enough about it to actually say that we do or we don't. The only thing I can do is go by the information we get from our department heads, regardless of what department it is. So, I mean, as the counselor, I would only assume that we were getting the information that's correct. I mean, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be questioned either way, but, I mean, if you're talking about the idea of putting it, I mean, if we're talking about a budget line in that department, I mean, I'm not gonna vote that we either keep a position or not, because I don't really think that's what our job is. I mean, as far as individual positions, I think we're looking more at a budget. If that money's put back in, and it needs to be one way or the other, I think that has to be left up to the management, so.
But what's your opinion? Would you vote to put it back in or not? I'm just trying to get some directions here to Steve on where to, what he should adjust the budget or not, based on what we're thinking.
And it's a tough one, it really is. Going back to Gina, there's no simple thing. I mean, if it's something that we're gonna put dollars back into that department to do what we need to, I mean, I'd rather go about that way versus the idea of saying, you know, that this dollars are gonna either make or break a person, a particular person's individual job. I mean, I didn't wanna do it with the other departments, I don't wanna do it with this one, you know what I mean, so.
And I can certainly see where Mike's coming from, but I think if council's gonna go ahead with public works changes, and that really could drastically impact the citizens directly, then I'm not sure why we would distrust the manager on this internal issue and not on direct services to the citizens. It seems a little strange to me. Gina, what do you think?
I think that, once again, it's an internal issue, and you gotta Steve a job. I think that we have to trust him and it's going to work. And I agree with Mike at the same time that it will be an adjustment for the employees. But as far as a real concerted effort to consolidate and to try to make departments leaner, Steve has done that. And should we look at other avenues eventually, maybe combining the school? I know we've tried that before, but should we look at other ways? Eventually, yes, we should. But I think it's a great effort in consolidation, and he says it's gonna work, it's gonna work.
Yes.
We, on this hand, look at employees that are underpaid and try to do the right thing. And then we look at what may impact the employees on the other hand, and we're contradictory of what we're saying. We're worried about employees that are being underpaid, but yet we don't have any problem doing something that may inconvenience the employees dramatically. Where are we coming from on this stuff? We are going from one extreme to the other, back and forth.
But I mean, some of the things that we look at, Roger, I mean, one of the things that, again, I don't think I can reflect back as a small business. Payroll, what it was 20 years ago, when my mom would sit back at the end of the week and calculate people's things and write checks and do a long form in the books and then actually do the second book to make sure the first book was correct, have gone a long ways. I mean, today, you know, there are programs, even for a small business like mine, that work very efficiently that really it doesn't need to be babysat unless there's some drastic system. It's basically all automated, it's done. it's the amount of work that's necessary to do payroll today is a lot different than it was last year and what it was 10 years before. So the idea of, it kind of goes back to the idea of what CMP was saying. Do we really need 150 people driving around the state of Maine, going to everybody's backyard to look at meters when we can just do it more efficiently by having smart meters? And unfortunately, part of the process that Steve's looking at is kind of that smart meter thing. It's called electronic, payroll. I mean, the idea of actually having a computer do a lot of the work, as much as we hate to think that's the way the world's coming to, than a person doing an individual. And again, I'm not picking on an individual person and department, I'm just saying that's what the world is changing to. It's becoming more efficient by using the technology that's available. And unfortunately, if you actually, would you still keep those 150 people driving around the state of Maine and CMP trucks burning gas, even though you had smart meters in place? Because the smart meters are probably going to be there regardless, because that's just the way the world is. The idea is, can you transition the rest of it to make it really efficient? If we could have a kiosk out there like the airport, so people could come in and pay their own taxes, swipe the card through and select the form through, we'd do it, because it goes back to, going through toll booths. How many people you see working toll booths these days? It's done electronically, it's probably more efficient, so the idea of reducing staff or thinking over a long period of time that you're actually using technology to actually reduce staff is probably not the ideal thing, but it's actually, unfortunately, something you have to do. The new softwares and stuff we have and that we use in the town, we've upgraded our software. We keep improving our IT. The only reason we're doing that is we got to take the benefits of it. The idea of improving IT and actually, buying new software and not using the benefits, it's kind of like going to buy a laptop. Most people go out and buy all the money for a laptop. How much of the applications do they actually use? People have Blackberries. How much of the phone do they actually use? They make most people just do emails and phones. There's a lot of information, a lot of ability to do it. And if we don't take advantage of that, and I see this, when I think about it, moving in that direction. Whether or not I'm right or wrong, maybe, I don't know. But I don't know how the department runs. I can only assume that we're using technology that's available to make it so we don't have to pay as much money for someone to actually overview that technology.
Just
question. Yeah.
Is it done through the software? Is all of the payroll done through the software? Or it's just a matter of recalculating it and doing it by week, correct?
It's a matter of clicking a box in the software package and saying you're going bi-weekly. That's pretty much what it's down to.
Okay, so it's not like
You're still going to have to enter in, currently, you're still going to have to do data entry to all the hourly employees. That is a given. Salary are different, it's much easier. So they still produce timesheets for their hourly employees based on the clock. And that data gets entered in if there's an hourly.
But you're still going to need just a little bit of something to answer potential questions from employees and change.
Roger Terrio has got a program that he has said, they've done this before, that we will ease into, it won't happen overnight like that. Next thing you know, you got to wait a month before you get your paycheck. No, there's a process that he's used before.
Who?
Roger Terrio.
Terrio?
Yeah, with unions. It's something that was set up because you were doing this through union. It gradually works it in so the employee isn't out and it can adapt much easier. So that's how we're going to work it with the employees. From the computer end of it, it's data entry. And then if we upgrade our time clock, it ties into our software, which is available. It'll be even easier for the hourly people to punch.
I know it's a lot more of an inconvenience for the people.
Oh, yeah. About what was going on entirely. I've gone through this with my own work, where we went to every 2-week payroll. Apparently we weren't as nice as the town was being about phasing it in, because we just gave them out.
Turkey, right?
Effective now, you're gonna get a paycheck every 2 weeks. We actually gave an incentive to employees to go electronic funds transfer versus paper checks.
How much problem does that cause? Were people upset by it?
I think people are upset.
It's your first couple of weeks.
People,
It's paid, it's
like
gotta
Ed
go
said,
2
are
weeks
used to
before
having
you
a
get
check
a
every
paycheck.
week, and now you're gonna get it every 2 weeks, and if you did it the opposite way, it does mess people up, but you get used to it, and so.
That's true, I know they do.
And they do electronic deposits and things.
Oh, they already do.
They do, okay.
Yeah, most
I
of
thought
our
we did
employees
that
are already
already.
on direct
So it
deposit.
doesn't change any of that, it's
No.
all one.
It shouldn't really make any sense, but we offer the incentive to do that because people still work. I'm not quite sure where the
Right.
savings was in that, but it's
Right.
not up for me to
Probably still
ask
get like
that
a big
question.
check.
Yeah, it says, non-negotiable $0, but you've got your little stubby thing on there.
Right.
I'm not gonna get into this one other than to say I just don't feel like we should be micromanaging that. We've asked for consolidation.
Okay, so, any further concerns anyone has here? Do you have anything further, Mike?
No, I just.
Yeah. Those are all certainly reasonable concerns.
Another item I have is, I heard when I watched the tape of your last workshop, I heard the statement that we moved money for, out of the town manager's professional development to economic development director, so that stuff could be done for the admin, through the grant process, or something through a grant process. TIP. So I'm trying to understand how the admin is covered out of the town manager's budget for TIP
The
funds.
administrative assistant not only works for me, but she has also picked up the task of helping do things for the Economic Development Office. And we felt that if that's the job description that she has, we could take her professional development and put that under the TIF, so it wouldn't be
So what
taxed.
professional development does this position do that is in support of economic development?
She takes classes in contract law, personnel. She just a bunch of classes, but she still can come under the economic development position because she does work for the economic development office.
So I just have some concerns with this because it sounds like we're paying for education that I'm concerned opens ourselves up for, I think the unions are watching closely.
Well, you already do that.
Right.
You do that in some of the union positions that you pay for funding. You've got
You know,
two.
I think we pay if they have a degree. I don't know that we pay for them to go to school.
Yeah, you do. You've had two police officers who have gone through programs and have received their bachelor's degree. Okay.
Right, but we give them a stipend for that based on what's in the contract, for them having a degree. We did not pay for them to get their degree.
Yeah, you did.
No, we did not.
Yeah, you did.
I don't remember ever paying for it.
Actually, it's a,
It's in both.
and I may not have the numbers exactly, but we did do that. Because when I was going through my degree program, I stood up here one night and said that with the step increases that they got for every number of credit hours they completed, if I used what they got for their increases with the number of credit hours that they completed compared to what I did, I'd had a 27% increase in pay. I remember this very clearly a couple of years ago.
And you've done that for your engineer when you first brought him on board.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I didn't believe we did it. I thought we just paid stipends because they had degrees. So we pay for people,
We got a lot of
education,
Tuition reimbursement, there is
whoever it would be, we would pay for their education to better themselves in their job.
Is there something that says that this employee has to stay here?
No, I asked that.
No, no, we're just generous in Lisbon, we got a lot of
Is
money.
it in our personnel
Boy,
policy
aren't we?
that we do that?
I'd have to look.
Because if it's not, it certainly should be.
I did recommend that that would be something that we would work on moving forward if we're gonna look at
I
personnel
didn't think that
policies.
was there, so
I mean,
that's what
some
made me raise the
employers-
question.
I was gonna say some employers are so specific that they ask for a month of employment for every $100 expended.
Yeah.
And if you leave before you have paid back that money, they will take it out of your final
Yeah.
approval. And
That
it's
sounds like a
something to
good thing to
consider.
do.
So, I don't want to pay for someone to go to school and have them leave the next day.
That's what my wife had to do at St. Mary's.
That's what I have to do.
Yeah.
But,
Question, now that the development department, proposal is to be paid through TIFs, is there going to be accountability? Are we going to see it on a yearly budget?
Yes, it's in your
Yeah,
budget.
it has to be there.
it's
It's
still
in our
right
budget.
now, we still have to vote on it.
I think I would make a recommendation going along with what I think Dot's trying to say, is that there's some rumors, allegations, I'm not sure what word you want to use, and some suspicion about economic development. I would say as transparent as we could be, and as many times as we could get information out there to keep people up to date on what's going on, you know, how this money's being reallocated, everything that we can tell them to reduce the number of questions or suspicious thoughts. I would be doing that.
Well, we'll still
That would
see
be
it in
my-
our weekly or monthly budget
Monthly
process,
budget.
right?
You'll always
It'll
see
be
it.
in those line items.
Yeah, it's,
I mean, none of that disappears for what we did.
That's right.
Correct.
This month. So all of that same management and visibility that we've seen before,
it's still
we'll
gonna be
still
there.
see.
But I think to make some sort of a mention of it, I mean, because oftentimes we get the reports and we look at it and we know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the newsletters and the reports that we get, if we could make it a point to speak of that, you know, those areas that people are suspicious about, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just so that if we comment about it and we say that things look good in that area, this is what's going on in that particular area, people know that we're watching it and, you know, advising them, giving them updates on what's going on.
If I kind of understand what you're saying, what you could potentially do, based on the current newsletter we send out, is, and I don't know, I've read some of them, but I don't necessarily remember this, but within each department's write-up, you could put in monthly how they're performing the budget. Right? So we could put in a mention, a recommendation, or whatever, not a recommendation, but a mention as to how they're performing to the budget, based out of money appropriated, total appropriations, year-to-date allowance or whatever, actuals or this, you know.
Brief, but yet there.
Something brief, you know, just a small, you know, 2 or 3 line sentence or something or whatever, or I don't know, maybe you can make a little chart or something that looks good with numbers in it or something that can be plugged in easily. That might be a little more visibility to them to help.
If they have written
I should
use and
say-
use,
Some of
if we have a
those.
problem, we gotta be
Right.
concerned in the
Yeah.
report.
Put some
Right.
tidbits of information out there so that people
Yeah.
know what's going on and it's less likely to draw controversy and debate.
I think once again, Lori, though, and I agree with you, I think people need to learn to come in and ask questions.
Mhm.
Instead of starting the rumor mill going, like is happening right now, people need to come in and they need to sit down and they need to talk with Scott and or Steve or whoever else is involved, instead of getting the citizens all riled up over something if they don't even know what they're talking about. And that's what's happening again, and that's what we need to be very careful of.
I agree with you, and there's a lot of rumors in the street.
Mm.
They're
So-
not calling them no rumors.
Right. So on this economic development, the switch for there, and this is more for me than anything, just trying to understand why all of a sudden this needs to take place. Because it hasn't been that way in the past. When we had our previous economic development directors, we didn't need this type of support or whatever in those areas, and now all of a sudden it appears that we need additional support in those areas, and I'm just trying to understand why, right? So when I get asked the question or whatever as to, this is why we're paying for some education out of this and for that person to support that area, why that now needs to happen compared to it didn't need to in the past.
It has, that person's job description changed probably after the first year I was here, to help support economic development in that office. So that person could focus on doing economic development, not always necessarily focusing on all the paperwork that goes in helping do that. So it's just support so we can work more efficiently.
So what you're saying is that we've always been doing it,
Well, you have
So, but we
economic
just
development
haven't-
directors
It hasn't
currently.
been as visible to us because the money was always being budgeted and taken care of under the town manager's section
I
of the
don't, I don't
budget.
think the person in that was in that same position was assisting the prior economic development person.
I'm not talking about back that far. I'm talking about from the time, I mean, basically, I think from the
Since
time
I
you came on
on.
board.
Yeah.
Right, and then we hired an economic development director, and I didn't realize, I guess, in my mind, that that position was helping economic development
That's
during
always,
that time
Always.
frame.
Always has been, Mike, through all the
Okay.
revitalization
And
stuff.
so that would lead me to another question, is there more of that salary that we can move into the TIP fund? Because if
well,
if
for
that position
suspicious
spending-
reasons, we talked about that last year, about taking some of that and.
But I mean, if that position's spending 20% of their time or 30% of their time,
Yes, it can be done.
can that be done, and does that help the whole picture, and will it fall within the 110,000 that we approved to move?
Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
Right, I mean, we need to make sure we fall within that, but I guess if it's legitimate and warranted, then my suggestion would be to move whatever can be moved.
We were
into
just
that
being
level.
cautious not to take too much of a chunk.
I would just do it, like,
Huh?
like,
Just
not
do it.
me, just do it.
Just do it. I mean,
It's, you can shelter that
It looks-
value as well.
It has the look of creative financing is what it looks like.
No, but
World's all
it's
about.
something, I mean, I asked this question too, I was pretty suspicious about how come it didn't happen all along, and again, you don't know what you don't know.
right,
I mean, I think it's something that could have been done, should have been done.
Was
and it
supposed to be
makes-
done.
Right, and it makes sense that, we are now doing that, it's to our advantage to do that. I would maximize that opportunity, as we're all just said,
Right.
if it's legitimate and we're able to do it, I'd
Right.
maximize it.
absolutely,
There's not too many perks that we get these days, so we should take the ones that
Right.
are available to us.
absolutely.
All right, it's after 9:30.
And the admin position was reduced by 1.75%.
Yes.
So, is there a reason why we didn't address parks and recreations as part of the consolidation for this budget?
We had bitten off enough, we felt, this year, and we are going to restructure and some responsibilities to pick up that, but we didn't move the department to within another department at this point in
Do
time.
we have a workshop on that?
I was just
We
gonna
certainly can.
ask if we could move this along and then
Yeah.
start at the next workshop at this point.
Right, because this is something you can implement in the middle of the year.
Yeah, we
potentially,
can,
right?
the job duties we can shift anytime.
Well, I mean, there may be, in the consolidation, there may be not the need for the same number of employees either, right? And there may be additional restructuring if we look at this, because I believe Public Works does some parks work as well, for mowing and some of this other stuff. I mean, I kind of view the Green Thumb Gang and all those little things as parks that I would put all within, right? I mean,
That is something that we are looking at reconstructing. It's not, we just haven't.
I'd like to recommend that we look at that as a workshop if we're going to do that preparation.
I want to wait till it's all done before we sit down and talk about it.
Savings of the water department in the future.
Well, we won't even go there. You have that next meeting.
Yeah, that'd take a whole year if we need to go there.
We need to get buy-in from the water department before we can do anything
No,
there.
we don't. We need to get somebody to, no, we don't.
Not for tonight.
This is our workshop about our budget. Not that that's not
Can you
important.
clean up the rumor mill for me on this janitorial offering from the school?
We
'Cause
talked
I was told
about
by
it.
some
No, well,
committee
pretty reliable
members
sources.
that-
Money was never discussed. We talked about the number of hours that people spend in this building, what their needs are, and we've gone through, since I've been here, 2 or 3 different people trying to find somebody who did a good job for us. We have a person there now that does our buildings, and we're very comfortable with him at this point. Were we gonna see any savings? No.
Do we have any
And it
more
was
meetings?
never offered for free.
Do we have any more meetings with the school department?
I had a meeting with Rick today about some stuff.
I mean, do we meet with the school committee before?
Next Tuesday, they'll be here.
Is that a question we can bring up to them then, to see what the cost would be, if any?
Well, if he starts offering it for free, it's pretty hard to turn down. Just like the payroll.
Right.
You know, he offered it for free, and then they came back, and by the time we were done with all the software upgrades and licensing
Right.
fees, we weren't saving any money.
I mean, I just want to make sure that we're all communicating and we're all hearing the same story, right? So I would like to be at least face-to-face with the school committee, understanding what things were offered on the table, how they turned out, so that everybody's up to snuff with the same story, right? And we're not one saying, the other saying, or whatever, or we're hearing stuff back and forth. I like to put that type of stuff to bed.
Moving forward, I think it's very important, and I've mentioned to Steve, is that we've been asking for this dialogue for a long time, and now that we have some of the dialogue, we don't want to wash it away. We want to keep moving forward. Whether it can be implemented 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, it doesn't make a difference. It's just the dialogue of actually having it on the table, which
It will come, because you won't have a choice.
Oh,
If the economy keeps going the way it is, you're going to have to consolidate. That is inevitable from every municipality throughout the state. You cannot continue to support all your services as one community. Sabatis is starting to see that, Durham is starting to see that, just within our borders, and it's happening throughout the state. It's how you get there that's a difficult process. And it's political will more so than financial.
I would recommend that unless you have something else that we could get through quickly, that we stop and set a time for another workshop to start with the discussion about parks and recreations that we.
With that's not even in this budget, I don't think that discussion that you're talking, right? That's after.
We're working on it this summer.
Yeah, that's, I think.
And that's not part of it.
Okay.
That's,
Separate workshop for that, we don't have any pressure, just deal with it. The gold rooms this summer, we're not dealing with anything else usually. Easier time. Well, you know, that period between after we pass our budget before the tax goes on, right?
Okay, is there other things to talk about before we?
Before you get too far into it, if I can just ask this is off the budget. Are we done with the budget?
I think we are, any further budget, I think so.
It's not on the agenda, but the Moxie Committee is requesting if the people who are going to be at the Moxie Festival, who are vendors or supporters of that, if we could utilize our sign out front for the time before the Moxie Festival to advertise who's going to be there. This is something the committee wanted to recommend. They came to me and asked, and because we don't normally do that allow local businesses to advertise on that, but I thought because they're part of the Moxie Festival, which is what we're
Yeah, I
running.
mean, I think it's a major event. I don't see any, I wouldn't see any.
what are the limitations gonna be? I mean, it would be nice to know how that would be implemented, to the idea of people that can be vendors downtown, or
They can flash it every 10 seconds.
or people that sponsor some of the Moxie stuff. I mean,
It'll be
it's
the
just-
people downtown, it's my understanding, that will be there as vendors and supporters. That's coming from the Moxie Committee.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more like, just different events that are going on?
I mean, that's my thought. I mean, I don't think that.
Wasn't it vendors?
Was it vendors or was it just?
I think
thought
it was
I heard
vendors.
events. I mean,
Events, we wouldn't have any
Probably
issues.
vendors.
I thought it was
Vendors,
a-
that was the question.
To me, the events would actually be more important. I mean, to me, I would have a hard time.
I mean, I
Yeah.
would recommend something simple, like, something like, coming to Moxie, or boom, boom,
Like
boom,
the
just
powwow
this vendor
or
names or whatever.
Right, not give everyone an ad on
That's
Not
our-
giving them,
Like, the
It was
events
vendors.
versus the vendors.
I wasn't there, so they,
I mean, if you put the powwow, or you put the fireman's muster, or you put that type of stuff, those are the events versus, you know.
Moxie.
I mean, I don't think you'd put up,
But
main
Moxie
jewelry
ads
vendor
and-
be on Main Street,
Oh,
How do you
spot
determine
5,
who
you
it
know.
is?
and-
Firemen or the Moxie Trucking Car and
They're
Town.
probably looking for some publicity if that's what they.
Yeah.
So they need to sign this.
mean, I
For
would
the
just-
The events,
Yeah.
right, I think that's a little bit more controversial to do the vendors.
individual
Because
vendors, I
we
think.
need to check to see if there's an investigation policy.
I'd vote for.
And then the individual businesses are gonna wanna be in.
All right.
Because the vendors have an opportunity to do their advertising for the brochures and.
Yeah.
All right, so our next item is the council working rules, and I know Laura, you had said you had some suggestions.
I have, I've worked on it a lot, but I'm not gonna start it at this time of night.
Okay, would you like to, okay, I understand.
I'm gonna put a lot more into that, and I'm very passionate about this, because there's some changes that need to be done,
Yeah.
but I would rather do it.
Fresh, yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna schedule a workshop to deal with that.
What's that meeting?
What works for the rest of the
Tuesday?
council?
Is it?
We have a very full meeting on Tuesday, but we were gonna vote on our budget, so that changes things, because you're not gonna be prepared to vote on our budget on Tuesday night.
No, I think we're ready for Tuesday night.
I mean, I don't know. It
We'll
depends.
have to.
What changes are we looking for? If we're not gonna have another workshop,
Right,
I mean,
another
we are,
workshop,
we
might
would
as
be
well,
ready to
yeah,
actually
you're right.
vote on our budget, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you will be voting on the school budget. Okay,
Right.
so that's,
But I'm just saying,
The
if we're not gonna have
17th.
any other workshops, why, you know, what else we gotta go over? You
I
know?
mean, the only change I think that
Coffee.
we recommended today was the salary stuff, right? And how we're gonna adjust that to the separate plan.
If that was to come forward, I don't know why we couldn't just move forward. To me anyways, I mean, if not, we're just gonna kick it
if the
around.
dollar amount's not going to change,
Well, it only
But
changed
you
minor based on the,
but you still have to go through every department and vote, like, that's how you
Right.
wanna do it.
yeah.
Same as you did last year.
That's still not gonna change really if we put a line in a different,
It'll just go into one line item within elected officials or whatever.
I
And
think we still, myself, Mark, I mean, I would still recommend the idea that we put it on next agenda to actually move it forward, but
Yeah, how does the rest of the council feel?
Now, I do have a question though, having asked the question about the insurance, if we don't have commitment from all of the unions to change the insurance, you have a proposed figure that I'm assuming.
Yeah,
will
we have
be
a
adequate
number
to
that will
cover it.
fall within what it will cost us.
with the
Okay.
percentage of what the
Yeah.
increase was for the
Right.
regular policy they have now.
So that's
Yeah,
not gonna mess us up to move forward with.
All the
Well,
paperwork we see
go for
now,
it.
I mean, it was pretty much there.
Yeah. The next Tuesday would be the 24th, if you wanna have a workshop that night.
Could do that if other people
That's
are available.
a week from next
Yeah.
Tuesday.
should be, supposed to be.
So that's 2 weeks from
At
today.
7, right?
We're gonna keep it on the agenda, but I don't know what we're gonna do.
Is this on the budget, or is this on the working rules?
Which one?
The one you're talking about 2 weeks
24th, I
ago?
think.
Give me the working rules.
Lori? Would it be worth making a proposal? How long do you think it would be, do you think it's gonna take to go through your proposals, an hour or more? More than that, you think?
Probably, I don't, it depends on really how much
Yeah.
That's how much we
discussion.
discussed,
I was
right?
gonna say
Exactly.
debate, but.
I mean,
discussion.
I'd even be willing actually to come in early prior to one of the, like, that next meeting at 6 o'clock to actually.
Aren't we, don't we already have the one?
Yeah, we're already
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this at 1.
Okay, never scrap that. We can do it
Also,
the
last
same-
night, I think we opened ourselves up to a meeting with Mr. Kelly.
Yes, we did,
Long
but
term, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the impression that he wasn't gonna be ready to come.
For a
until
couple of
April
weeks,
June.
those baby,
He's got a
Long.
ways to go before he'll be ready.
Yeah, I would say like the third week of June. is
At
what
the
I
earliest,
thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
That depends when the
would
baby comes, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'd
that's
say as soon
pretty-
as he's ready to go, we should
We
go,
should.
you know, because we want to get it out there before.
Well, we've got a meeting with the water department. Would that be out of the realm of things to bring him in at that same time?
I don't think he's gonna be prepared for that time.
Remember his-
And
his
the
wife's-
water department
wife's pregnant.
requested this meeting with the council, and I don't have an agenda. I'm not sure what they wanna talk about. I'm assuming it's some of the emails that they've been getting from individuals. So, and I'm not sure how, if they're gonna get into personnel issues. That's
Well,
not
it's-
your
I was gonna
concern.
say, it's personnel, there's nothing
So
we
I'm
can
not
do.
sure. Ken Wells asked me to do that, and the commissioners, so I put it together. And everybody agreed that they could meet at 6 o'clock, what's on their mind, I don't know.
Okay, so if we're going to table the council working rules, we do need to discuss the local group nomination for 2011 Spirit of America Foundation Award. And this is, they've asked us to nominate a person or group that we think has served the community, and it's in this letter here that was given out. And if anyone has a suggestion,
Late, yeah, not yet. They're-
I know, that's why I really need it now, we can't table this any later.
I would make a motion that we just hand that over to Steve's office to actually come up with a group.
I
I
think,
mean, I'm not sure what
Well,
type
we
of format
we
fits
have
it
an
in. I mean,
individual that we thought was recommended from some of the staff through the economic development stuff, and that was,
I would think that if we were gonna nominate somebody that's really done well for this community, I think that the rec department ought to be really looked at highly for what they've done with the old people. I think they've been doing a fabulous job, and they should be noted for that.
I don't even know the scope of what this award's.
Who else were you thinking?
Ross Cunningham.
Oh, yeah.
Ross actually goes over.
I mean,
and,
I would-
yeah,
I would
Ross goes
nominate that
above
in a
and
minute.
beyond. Is
What's
I would
that?
actually second that.
Non-employee.
I mean, not that we're
Ross
voting.
Cunningham.
Yeah.
Oh,
Spends a lot of countless hours, even with that program. I think Ross works hand in hand even with those.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
A lot of time with this summer park,
Yeah.
constant park series and
Yeah.
several other events that we have.
I'm in favor of that.
I'd go with that also. It's a name that you really can't second guess as volunteerism in town, that's for sure.
I support that.
Yeah. Does that work?
Okay.
Yep.
That's okay with everybody else, submit that. It's just taken care of.
Do we actually have a date? Well,
I
that we could
need
actually
an
put down
email
for-
address or something on this, Mark.
What?
You could send that to me tomorrow.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, as far as the meeting working rules, do we actually have a tentative idea when
There
we're?
is a phone number in there too, Steve.
Oh, there is.
622-7311, right next to
Send
the
it
last
for?
paragraph.
I said, is there a tentative date that we're gonna put for the meeting rules?
Yeah, I believe we're gonna do a workshop 2 weeks from now. Yeah. That was my understanding.
should
7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock, yeah.
we'll have to wait and see what she says.
You have to have to send reminders.
I can deal with that.
Yeah, I'll show,
I have ways.
everybody
I'll try to
asked
send a reminder
about,
Advising
myself, yeah,
reminders,
yeah.
saying I'll forget.
Can we make a recommendation, just a straw vote, that between now and then, we just try to abide by our meeting rules?
Yeah, that would be good, because actually, as I was going down through these, some of the things that I wrote in there is that we're just not even abiding by the rules that are already established.
I would
let
make,
alone
I would actually,
Trying to change some of those.
strong opinion on my
So in
side
other
that
words,
between
we
now
don't
and then,
stop our meetings at 9:30 at night,
Right.
because there's nothing urgent going on.
and a lot of the
Stay
items that
until
would,
11 o'clock talking circles.
you betcha.
Okay. That's not just my own information.
No, not mine either, but from now to then, it would be nice that we actually did allow people to get up and speak about personnel.